Welcome in. It is the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980. Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin Sheehan today. Plenty of stuff we got to get into. There's a new update, or maybe not really a new update, but...
Not for listeners of this show.
Yeah, not for listeners of this show necessarily, but there is a little bit of an update that's been making rounds on social media that I think a lot of fans have picked up on the uniforms for the Commanders, so we'll get into that here in just a couple of minutes. Also, ESPN put out an article with the best free agent fits around the NFL. There's a couple names that are tied to Washington that I think make some sense in there. Daniel Jeremiah put out his second mock draft. I tell you one thing I was doing yesterday, Max. I was watching some Jeremiah Love tape.
Oh, were you now?
And I made the mistake of watching his USC game where he rushed for like 228 yards.
Oh, so you're head over heels now.
I'm not necessarily saying you have to draft Jeremiah Love, because I still like to think that I have some sort of convictions and understand how football works a little bit.
Of course.
But after watching him, I'm like,
however,
I've said that he was the best player in the draft alongside Caleb Downs, and I don't even know if then I was still high enough on him. Like,
wow.
That's how good he is.
Okay.
Like, I'm watching this guy, and I'm like, this not play style-wise, because they're different. I think he's a little more of a glider than Bijan Robinson, but I was like, this is the kind of impact that Bijan Robinson has on football games. So I was
Absolutely.
like, well, Jeremiah Love, like I wouldn't prefer that they draft him, but if for whatever reason they decided to, I'd probably have a Jeremiah Love jersey added to the closet pretty quickly.
I'd be surprisingly okay with it. He's really the one offensive player that I'm like, if we did end up taking a chance on him and taking him, I would absolutely be able to talk myself into it. Now, I mean, of course, all the problems last season were defensive. So that's naturally where my eye is going to go. But man, Jeremiah Love, he's just so damn good. And pairing him with Jaden Daniels and that type of offense would be unreal. So yeah, if Jeremiah Love's the one guy, I'd be able to swallow that pill a little bit easier.
Speaking of the defense real quick, because there's a couple more things that I want to get into here in this hour, specifically the uniform discussion. But I was thinking of this on the drive in. I don't know that we'll really have time to get into it today, so maybe another time I'll get into it. But defensively, there are so many holes on this roster. There are so many problems. And I was advocating the other day that when you look at what they're going to try to do defensively to plug all the holes, because realistically, the players that you feel good about going into next year, at least playable caliber, let's say it that way. Maybe not necessarily starting caliber, but starting caliber for this team, potentially.
Right.
Like Deron Payne, obviously. Javon Kinlaw, right? Dorrance Armstrong, Trey Amos, Mike Sanders-Still, Will Harris, and Frankie Louvu. Quan Martin, maybe. So like
you're going to hear about it too.
And that's the thing. It's a stretch for a lot of these guys, frankly. Yeah. Like I would move on from Deron Payne this offseason. I'm not very big on Javon Kinlaw. Dorrance Armstrong is probably their best defensive lineman, so I'm fine with him. Frankie Louvu, I think, fits well with what this scheme is trying to do. So I'm interested to see what they're going to try to do with him this year. Trey Amos, I believe in. I think he can be a really, really good player. And Sanders-Still, I think, actually might be unleashed a little bit more in this kind of a system where you can allow his football IQ to stand through a little bit more. And I think Will Harris will do fine in this system. Quan Martin, like I said, there's some big question marks. Regardless, basically all of those guys could be upgraded over if you really wanted to. The defense, though, was absolutely horrendous last year. If they just go out this offseason, and the way that they address that is they spend big on one guy, who we're going to talk about in a little bit as part of this free agent fits, is Quay Walker, right? So they spend big at linebacker there, and that's a name that people are going to know. They don't really do anything else marquee on the defensive side of the football in free agency. Like, they're not going after Trey Hendrickson. They're not doing those sorts of things. They still might sign guys. Like, they sign an A.J. Epinesa or someone like that. They don't sign the top-tier guys like Adafe Owe or Boye Mafe. They go with lesser-known guys that are really solid, probably in that Dietrich Wise category.
And Andrew Van Ginkel, if you will.
Yeah. Well, frankly, he'd be better than all those guys.
You might be right.
If they sign a corner that's more so like their fourth corner or something like that, and they're expecting Amos and Jonathan Jones tier like you saw last year, and they sign another Will Harris type at safety. But if they sign those caliber of players, and the only marquee guy they sign defensively is Quay Walker, and then they use the 7th overall pick and they could use, frankly, the entire draft if they'd like on defense. Is that enough to actually upgrade the defense? Like, is bringing in a draft pick at the top of the draft, which could be David Bailey, could be Reuben Bain, could be Caleb Downs, could be Arvell Reese, could be a lot of different names. But if they bring in one of those guys, and that's their marquee addition alongside just one free agent addition, and you bring in Durante Jones to run a new scheme, is that enough to fix the defense? Like, do you think that right there is enough to make this a defense that is good enough to win football games? Because ideally, the way that this team has worked out, I think they're still going to be an offensive-led football team for at least another year or two. They could flip that by roster construction, and generally when you have a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, assuming he can stay healthy, it's going to be an offensive-led team. But I do wonder if just those simple additions can get you to be slightly below average league defense. Because if you get above that, then that's fantastic. And that would be in a lot of ways overachieving, I would think, with what you're looking at for the roster. But if they could even get to just slightly below league average, if they can get their offense back to playing at a high enough level that it's borderline top 10, that's enough to win football games in this league, especially when you have a quarterback like Jaden, where we saw in his rookie season, and it kind of bit them in the butt this past season, where they lived in so many close games in his rookie season. But I think you saw him develop that clutch gene. So anytime they were in a football game, Washington felt free and loose. The other team started to pucker up a little bit, like, uh-oh, Jaden Daniels might finish this game with a football, and if that's the way it's going to end, we're probably going to lose this football game. So you can kind of live that way a little bit when you have a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, because we've seen other teams be able to do that somewhat consistently. The Kansas City Chiefs did it. Eventually it bites you, but you can get it done a little bit that way. Do you think that if they were to get the defense to that level, where it's the 18th best defense, which would be a significant improvement from this past season, I think it'd make a massive difference. But is getting, take your pick of David Bailey, Arvell Reese, and that's your marquee guy to go alongside Quay Walker, and that's it of marquee additions on the defensive side of the football, but the big difference is going to be the scheme. Is that enough, Max? Do you think that that defense could then take that jump from being one of the worst in the league to slightly below league average when those are just the only marquee additions, or do you think it's going to take more than that?
I think it's probably going to take a little bit more than that, but dude, it's a start like that. And that really is what matters, is putting one foot in front of the other in a situation like this. Cause like you got to bring in, I mean, obviously you're going to draft guys who are going to raise the ceiling of your defense, but free agency is about bringing in a lot of guys. And we saw this last year, who can raise the floor. Now, did Adam Peters do a great job, or did the health of this team last year do a good job in assisting that? It really because you saw what happened after all these guys got injured. Like the bottom just kind of fell out, and we were trying to run the car kind of like Fred Flintstone. We're just pushing it with our feet.
Yeah.
So that's kind of just making sure that these guys stay healthy, or bringing in guys with a clean bill of health, or at least as close as you can get in this National Football League, because it's so important. Because like we saw, it can just derail a season, man. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at going forward, bringing in guys who can raise the floor in free agency and drafting guys who can just bring that ceiling all the way up.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by what they're going to be able to do. We'll get into some mock drafts coming up at 11 o'clock. Daniel Jeremiah putting out his second mock draft. I really love reading what he has to say about the NFL draft. He's my favorite draft expert, so we'll get into his mock draft coming up at 11 o'clock. But want to start with this. We got an update from Zach Cohen. So if you don't know anything about Zach Cohen, he's kind of right up my alley. If you know anything about me, if you're watching on the stream today, I'm rocking a Team USA Austin Matthews jersey, getting ready for hockey later today against Sweden, the quarterfinals at 3 o'clock. So fired up about that. And I'm a big jersey guy. You want to talk uniforms? You want to break all this stuff down? You want to talk about jerseys you collect? All that? I'm your guy. I have so many jerseys. So many. Matter of fact, I've told you the number before, Max. Now, these don't all fit now, but I'm curious if you know the number of jerseys that I currently own.
I know
it's a stupid number.
I know it's a lot.
Again, these don't all currently fit, but just for context, I'm an only child. So I get a lot of, I got a lot of stuff for my birthdays and Christmas. And basically every single time that I was getting gifts, I was asking for a jersey. So I might get one or two every birthday.
Let's say it's a solid Christmas and birthday.
3 or 4 every Christmas. And now I'm an adult with some money and I'm irresponsible and buy seemingly 5 or 6 jerseys every year.
Tobes is a jersey whore.
It's a fantastic drop.
Listen, I knew it was in there somewhere. I had to find it.
And the Rooster's not wrong. I have a lot of jerseys. Can you guess the number? And by the way, there's one in the mail. I was just telling you about it before the show. I got a Tarek Skubal World Baseball Classic jersey on the way.
So we're under 50 still, right? Or have we eclipsed that number?
Oh, we're well over 50.
Well, okay, cool.
Again, we're talking since I was like 5 years old.
Oh, we're including like the ones that don't
everything.
Fit. Oh, Jesus.
Everything.
We're gonna go 173.
You're slightly over, but not that far over, which is ridiculous. I'm at 157.
Wow.
This is jersey number 157. CJ Abrams had the honor of being jersey number 150. Tarek Skubal is going to be the honor of being number 158.
That's sick, dude. That's a collection.
Yeah, you'll appreciate this story. I didn't want to. I was going to buy the new Cap Skriegel jersey.
The
red, white, and blue one.
Yeah,
not the black one, but I was going to buy one. But then I was like, I'm just going to wait until maybe it goes on sale or something. And then GP and I are sitting in the 200s watching Alex Ovechkin score goal number 900 right in front of us. And I said, well, Jeeps, let's go buy that jersey because I'll forever have a story with that one.
Yeah.
I spent a few extra bucks because I got it at Cap 1. But I got a jersey the night Ovi scored 900. So that one I can live with, right? Like you can... it's always nice to have a little story with stuff.
Oh, dude, yeah, it's part of the reason that when we were at the opener, I splurged on some game used stuff.
Yes,
because just in case it was Alex Ovechkin's last home opener, I needed something from that.
By the way, the story that I wish we could get and the visual I wish we could get is Max riding on one of the little scooters across town with a hockey stick, like he's about to.
Oh, it was jousting,
joust people in the streets.
It was great. It was great. I hopped on that scooter. I had to get to my car. Up in Northeast because I parked it at XM because I have free parking up there. Shout out them. But yeah, going up and over, and it was just I tucked under my arm. My arms were getting really tired by the end of that. But fortunately, nobody ran up on me, and so that was my plan. If someone did, they were getting Bauer taped right across their teeth.
Real quick, you want to know my most obscure jersey I own of the 157 I have?
Ooh.
It's a former Redskin.
I was going to say Detlef Schrempf for some reason. No, I want to hear
he
it.
Had one good year.
Adam Archuleta.
You're barking up the right tree. Had one good year for
Ryan
the team.
Grant.
I believe he's currently, I don't know if he's still there because of the coaching changes, but he was the special teams coordinator for the Ravens last year.
I need the name.
Chris Horton.
Really? He was the special teams coordinator for the Ravens?
Yes.
Man.
After his rookie year, I was all in on Chris Horton. All in on him, and he never recreated that rookie season. But I think Grant Paulson and I are the only two people I know that own Chris Horton Redskins jerseys.
It's a deep cut for sure, man.
Which I bet he's frustrated about because he's the jersey hipster.
Right.
So he's mad that someone else has it.
He's mad you stepped on the flow.
But again, that was me as a kid loving this team and getting jerseys all the time. So speaking of jerseys, anyways, off that tangent, we got some updates from Zach Cohen. Which, again, if you are a jersey fanatic like me, he's really good to follow. He keeps up with all the new jersey things that could be happening and what could be popping up in uniforms. And he's been following the Titans, who are likely getting a new logo, all these different things. So he gave an update on the Commanders logos and on the Commanders uniforms. And here's the cliff notes of what we learned. Again, if you listen to this show, you probably didn't learn anything, but it was just reiterated by someone other than Kevin Sheehan. Glossy helmet finish, likely to return. Super Bowl era unis are going to stay, and we're going to see the burgundy jerseys return to the traditional look, so more along the lines of what you see with, get rid of the gold number, the Commanders font, those sorts of things. It's going to be more along the lines of what you see with the Super Bowl era unis, just flipped over to the burgundy like we all grew up watching, like the team that we're used to seeing for years. There will be no new logo, so they're going to stick with the taco holder, is what I think.
That is the name it's earned now.
And then he was speculating about a potential spear look alternate because of the fact that we've seen the spear incorporated more in some of the logos they've thrown on different things, some of the ways that they could do that. Obviously, we've seen some pretty cool mock-ups on Twitter that graphic designers have thrown out there of Jaden Daniels in a look that fits like a Sonny Jurgensen era with the spear on the helmet, like those sorts of things, right? So I think that'd be cool if you could get one of those as an alternate for it, and they would probably then ditch the black uniforms, and you would just see the team look more like the former eras of the Redskins, where it's got the burgundy and white jerseys, and then alternate would be that darker burgundy with the spear helmet. If that's all that ends up being, if that's what the changes are, and there isn't anything more drastic than that, I'm curious what you guys think. If you want to hop in, 301-230-0980 on the Team 980 listener line, 301-230-0980. If that's the only changes we see for the uniforms, and there isn't a new logo, which I know a lot of people are going to be frustrated by, it's still going to be the W on the side of the helmet, which, again, I think some people are frustrated by. They want to see some sort of change where it looks more like the logo ties back at least to what the history of this team is. If the changes aren't there for that, but you get the glossy helmet finish, which is funny because I wanted that back. That's something that I grew up watching this team that had a glossy finish. It didn't have the matte finish. Now, the matte finish did not look bad on these helmets that they've had, but it was different.
It's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I can understand people that are like, why are you going back to the glossy? Like, I saw some people complaining about that. Some people are happy about it. I think the fan base is a little divided on that, but
divided on many things.
100%. We're in DC, of course. There's going to be a lot of division on a lot of things, but I don't think that that's like a super divide. Like, we might disagree, but no one really cares.
No one's going to get
much
up in arms about it. Yeah.
I know a lot of people are going to be frustrated about the fact that the name's not going anywhere. The logo isn't necessarily going anywhere.
We're never pleasing that crowd, though.
No. So, but I'm curious what people think. Super Bowl era uniforms, those are going to stay. That's going to be the primary. And so for the most part, I think you'll end up seeing this team look more like the team that we watched for decades and decades. Look more like the team that you cared about. You know what? I got a chance to see them in person once. I went over for the Christmas Day game against the Cowboys, and it looked like my team. I've been to a couple of games where they've rocked the Commanders uniforms. I've seen the whites. I've seen the I don't think I've ever seen the blacks in person. I'm personally not a fan of those because it doesn't look like my football team that I grew up cheering for. I don't think they look like my team. There's not enough burgundy and gold represented, even though there is some gold in there. This team never wore all black, even though the jerseys themselves are cool. If you gave those to a local high school or something like that, yeah, it's a dope uniform. I really, really like that. Doesn't really fit with the football team that I cheered for. So wasn't necessarily a huge fan of those, although as like a fashion thing, like, okay, I understand the allure of those. And I think a lot of young people, people in my age group, frankly, a lot of people really liked those and clung to those. But I'm not a huge fan of those. And then the burgundies were just different, but I actually didn't mind those aside from the fact that they weren't burgundy. But I'm curious for fans out there, 301-230-0980, if that's the changes, that's the extent of the changes that you see. And in reality, once you get to that point, I don't see there being a lot more drastic changes tying this thing back to the past. The name's not coming back. The logo's likely not going to change.
And I think that's the one thing that I think you're going to hear a lot of with people as they call in is the logo above all, because there's still spots in the stadium where you can see the logo. Now it's like on a plaque and stuff like that, honoring the past, but they have gotten a little bit more accepting of posting old images.
Yeah, like,
and
accept the fact that that's part of your history. Don't try to erase that, because that was one of my frustrations about this whole rebrand and everything that started happening. Obviously, we can talk about all the guys that were here that were in charge of that. They're not here anymore. None of the guys that were really making the decisions on this were even tied into this Redskins organization and understood the history and everything. Mm-hmm. They might have understood it as an outsider, but they didn't live it day in, day out. So that was one of my frustrations at the time. But the other frustration I had as time went on is I'm watching the Tennessee Titans rock a Houston Oilers throwback. I'm watching Seattle rock a Steve Largent era throwback. I'm watching all these different teams rock throwback uniforms, and I'm watching a team that has been around since 1932 have to pretend as if they didn't have any history before 2/2/22. That to me was stupid.
Ridiculous.
So to see at least some of the history mixed in with an update, understanding that the climate, that the logo, all that stuff, we don't have to litigate whether they should. I don't really care about that stuff. I don't think the logo's coming back. I don't think the name's coming back. And I'm not really that interested in arguing about that. But if you're someone that really wants this to tie into the past, I think this is the extent you're going to get. Aside from the fact that they're going to return to the RFK site. Like, I think this is as far as you're going to see this team go back. They're going to look like the team once again that you cheered for, because the uniforms are going to look much more like what you grew up watching, Super Bowl era, and then the flip side where they're going to have the white pants and burgundy jersey, likely is what it sounds like. But the glossy helmet finish, that everything's going to be largely the same. Gold face mask, the helmet stripes. Difference is going to be the logo. And that's going to be the extent. Like, I don't know how much more you can tie back to the past after that. If that's how it ends, and then it's your team, it's the Commanders that just look more like the Redskins, and that's the most that they can tie back, are you fine with that? 301-230-0980. We'll get to some of your phone calls next. Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin Sheehan. Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980. Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin today. 301-230-0980 if you would like to hop in. We're talking about an update we got from Zach Cohen on Twitter, who's kind of a jersey junkie, uniform junkie, if you will. Someone that really loves to dive into what's going on across different leagues, specifically with the NFL, though, dealing with logos and new uniform updates. And he's done this for years, so he's a really good follow if you're into that sort of stuff. But he gave an update, which, again, isn't necessarily new to the Kevin Sheehan Show. Kevin said a lot of this stuff before, but gave an update basically confirming some of the same things that Kevin has talked about. A glossy finish on the helmet is going to return. Super Bowl era unis are going to stay, which I think we kind of knew when those were unveiled. Those were going to ultimately be their permanent uniforms at some point or another. The burgundy jersey is going to return, but it's going to look more like the traditional Super Bowl era style look. No new logo, and potentially an alternate look that gets rid of the black jersey and brings back more of a spear look that we've seen from this team in its history. What do you make of that? 301-230-0980. Let's get out to Ross, who is in Tampa. Ross, what's going on?
So, what's going on with you, bro?
Oh, not too much, man.
Give me a quick second. I'm going to pull my car over and turn off my truck, working for the government, and got to be smart.
You be
All
responsible,
right, man.
Ross.
Hey, listen. So I'm on Facebook the past couple of days, right? And I'm looking at this beautiful game-worn Quan Martin Christmas Day jersey.
Yes.
The white throwback with the little candy cane. It's looking at me. I'm looking at it, man. But I just, being married with a child, it had been so irresponsible to.
So we just talked about being responsible.
$1,000. Man, I wanted it so bad. So this is the only thing with the uniform, and I'm totally cool. We go back to that old look that I grew up loving, you grew up, and Max grew up loving.
Yeah.
But the one thing that always stands out to me, Kevin, who I take everything, well, most things he says as gospel because he grew up in the area. He's a homegrown fan he talks about the organization. If the logo is not a problem, then I feel like at the very least, that should be something up for discussion in 2030. Other than that, I'm totally cool with the original look. Put the stripe back on the helmet, put the stripes back on the pants and the socks and all that stuff. Bring back all three colors, white, burgundy, and gold. And then we just keep it burgundy jersey, white uniforms.
So, Ross, really curious, though. Do you think that because this is how I feel about the logo. There's not an issue understanding it's a part of the past and using it in that sense, but bringing it back to be a part of the present is something that they would allow. I personally would love to see it back. That's the stance I have. But I think the way that they look at it is I don't have an issue. Like the thing that I hated was when they would honor a former Redskin like Darryl Green and they would purposely make sure that the Redskins logo was not visible. I hated that. So I think they're fine with allowing it to be seen in those sorts of contexts and being around the stadium as like hey, this was a part of our history, even though it's not going to be a part of our future or the present. You think that that's more along the lines, or do you think that there really isn't an issue as much with the logo anymore and that they could potentially bring that back?
I think what it comes down to, Toby, is money. I think if Josh Harris had a meeting with all his corporate sponsors and they had like a discussion, here's what we want to do. Maybe come 2030, we can do the best we can and go back to watching the football team, but we get the logo back on the helmet, logo midfield and stuff like that. But if that's an issue where like you bring that logo back in present time, and that's going to affect your bottom dollar, then I can understand why. Because, man, at the end of the day, it's all about money. Yeah. If it had nothing to do with money, we would have never lost the name in the first place. We all know the story on how the name was originally taken from us. But with what you're asking, with that look, because it looked like home, man, but like you called it, the taco holder, W, I would rather, on top of everything that they're doing, just go back to the plain burgundy helmets. And I don't even want the numbers. I think when you slap numbers on the side of the helmet, that's collegiate for me. I don't even like what the Chargers do it. But yeah, who is the guy that's doing all the coverage? Because I'm a huge uniform junkie. Like I look forward to seeing the Falcons' new uniforms. I look forward to seeing what the Titans are going to unveil, the Rams, and whoever else is. I heard the Ravens. I always look forward to like noon in like mid-April when they drop the uniforms. Pick their three favorite players and rock them. That's what I want.
Zach Cohen FB on Twitter. Zach Cohen. Cohen is Cohen.
I'm a uniform and stadium junkie. When everything was passed in the summertime, I was ready for the unveiling, and yeah, they didn't disappoint. So
yeah,
that's my take on it. I ain't gonna take up too much more time, man. The uniforms can stay the way they are, but if I had it my way, if Josh Harris and his goons kidnapped me from Tampa and pulled the bag over my head and said, "Hey, man, what do you want to do?"
Yeah.
Well, we can't bring back Redskins, but the logo's okay. Put the logo back on the helmet. But if that's a problem, man, I'd rather just be the closest we can be to Washington Redskins, and that's just the Washington football team, because keeping the Commanders isn't going to make everybody happy, but bringing back the look is going to, heal a lot of wounds.
All right, man. I appreciate the phone call. Yeah, I think it's tough for me. I'm curious your thoughts on this, Max. I'd love to see the logo back. I'd love to see that incorporated more. Frankly, I wish I had more gear that I bought during that time frame that I could wear that I was still of that time frame.
I've been digging through my basement. I actually found a Redskins hoodie or Redskins sweater that I've been meaning to find for forever. So
yeah,
be prepared for that over the next couple days.
I wish I had more of that stuff, but I view when they talk about that logo and the fact that it's going to be, I mean, you've seen it now at least displayed, because again, the thing that frustrated me was when you'd have a Redskins legend, and make no mistake, they wore the logo, they played for the Redskins, regardless of what it is now, they played for those teams that had that name, that had that logo. And I hated when they would try to get rid of that, where you'd see the helmet, but it was purposely either photoshopped out or it was covered up
or mysteriously angled so you could barely see. Yeah.
I hate that stuff. I hated that. And luckily, we're not getting that anymore. You don't have to pretend like Sean Taylor didn't play for the Redskins when you buy Sean Taylor gear. You get Darryl Green with his jersey retirement. They're selling gear, and thankfully it has the logo. They're not photoshopping stuff out. That to me was stupid, and I hated that. But I view it as that. They're willing to leave that as a part of the history, and they're not going to try to erase that part of the history anymore, which is nice. But I don't view it as something where they're like, okay, now that maybe some of the climate has changed and different things, we can just bring the logo back. I view it as more as, all right, we can at least understand that was a part of the history, but it's not going to be a part of what we're doing right now or in the future. Is that how you view it?
Yeah, I mean, it's honoring the past without forcing it to stick around. You know what I mean? It's yeah. So I get what they're doing, and I'm so happy that they're kind of more willing to incorporate it into stuff now, and hopefully eventually we get there to the point where we can kind of reincorporate it back into, because dude, that logo so hard. I don't it. It's one of the better logos in sports, in my opinion. Now I could just be a homer saying that, but I'm a big fan. But yeah, I'm hoping that we kind of eventually get to that point where putting having the tribal chief and the feather and all that, and kind of tying it all back together, at least in a throwback uniform type of way, or even regular, I'd be happy with it.
Robert in the chat says, why don't you guys get over the fact that fans are still frustrated about it? And look, I understand it. I have family that is fans of this team. I grew up here, and there are plenty of people in my family, friends that I know, that are frustrated about. They have the same feelings that many of you have. So that's part of why when I talk about these things, I don't like to get into the name discussion, the logo discussion, because I understand how passionate so many fans are about it. And I'm kind of the mindset that it's not worth arguing about because I can't make any difference. It's not that I disagree with you necessarily, that I think you're an idiot or something like that. Hey, get over it. I'm not on that side. It's just more so for me having 3 hours to talk, filling in for Kevin Sheehan today.
God forbid.
Is it worth me talking about it for 3 full hours that everyone's going to call in saying, bring the name back and bring the logo back? Of course you're going to say that.
God forbid radio host talks about a report that was in the news about his team's logos and uniform lately.
Yeah, so I understand a lot of fans are frustrated about it, and I'm not going to tell you to feel otherwise. But if this is what you're going to get, where you're a kid begging for ice cream or whatever, and they say, here's this dessert, whatever it is, and it's not exactly what you wanted, but it's something. Is this enough, or is it something where you're like, until I get? And by the way, this is how I feel about this. People that are begging for a name change aren't going to be happy unless it goes back to Redskins. Correct. People that are begging for a new logo likely aren't going to be happy unless it goes back to the Redskins logo. So for me, if I were in charge over there, I would love to see them go back. I don't think that's a realistic possibility. So I don't think it's a worthy fight, because if you change the name to Red Hogs, then okay, some fans are going to be thrilled. Some fans are going to be the same way. Well, it's not Redskins. So I don't know that it's worth that fight. And part of the reason I wanted them to say Washington football team was because that was an identity we've always had, Washington. Now, would you have made plenty of jokes? Would you have had plenty of jokes made? Yeah, plenty. But one thing that I think they miscalculated here, when they took the Redskins name away and they were the Washington football team, Max, to me, that was one step. You took away something. I didn't have to embrace anything. I didn't have to embrace anything new. The uniforms were largely the same. You just took the logo off the helmet. Everything was largely the same with the exception of they were no longer Redskins and didn't have the logo. But that was more so mourning a loss versus when they went to Commanders and they built up this new image. I think that's twofold. That's asking people to mourn the loss of their former team's logo and name and ask them to embrace something new. They have to buy into Commanders. And so it was a double whammy where instead of just getting a jab of losing it, you got a jab and then a hook.
In the right cross.
Yeah. From, hey, by the way, embrace this new name, which we all think is stupid. So I think that was a tough part. Now, Josh Harris came in after the fact, and now he's trying to play some damage control. But I think the best option for them is the route that they're going. Make the team look like the team that many of these people cheered for, that people in this area fell in love with. Make it look like them, at least, for the most part. And fans will at least feel a little bit differently. Because to tell you how bad the rebrand and everything went, not that everybody doesn't know this, but Max, everyone in this area celebrated when those Super Bowl era jerseys came back out.
Thrilled. I'd never seen this fan base so united on one single issue.
Max, they literally just copied someone's homework from the 1980s and brought it back, and people are like, oh my goodness, it's the greatest thing ever.
It's so easy.
That's how bad they did this rebrand, that they didn't do anything new. There was nothing revolutionary in there. There was nothing cutting edge about it. It was the exact same with the exception of minor tweaks for the logo and the finish of the helmet. That was it. That was the difference. And everyone embraced this thing like it's the greatest thing ever. And that just shows you, I think, that having at least a tie back where we don't have to pretend like this team didn't exist before 2/2/22, I think gets fans feeling nostalgic, especially after having the rug ripped from under you so quickly. Like, it wasn't something where you had, even though there have been discussion for years and years about whether that name should change, whether the logo should change. We'd heard that for plenty of years. We debated it on these radio stations for plenty of years. But it just happened so abruptly. It just happened so quickly for all of it to be gone. And again, I'm not relitigating whether they should have the name and stuff, but I think having the tie back with these uniforms to look more like previous eras, I think makes so much more sense, where it looks like the team you grew up cheering for. There's just a slight difference and a slight change, even though, at least on the look, even though we understand that it's much larger than that. And it's hoping that maybe that can bring some of that fan base that was so frustrated. And some of the fan base is gone forever, and I understand that. But it's a tough spot to be in where you're Josh Harris trying to play damage control. 301-230-0980 if you'd like to hop in, talking about an update we got on the uniforms, basically saying they're going to go back to the glossy finish. Super Bowl era uniforms going to be the new norm. Those are going to be permanent, as well as bringing back a burgundy look that mirrors that. What do you make of that? 301-230-0980. Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin Sheehan.
All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. We start off with a Team USA recap. Team USA's Michaela Schifrin earns the gold in alpine skiing, bringing Team USA's gold medal total up to 7. And Kyrie Irving shutting it down for the remainder of the NBA season. He now sets his sights on a return in 26 and 27. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type of the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch programs like Take Command all off season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin Sheehan today on the Kevin Sheehan Show. 301-230-0980 if you'd like to hop in. We'll get to more of your phone calls in just a second, recapping what we're discussing right now. Zach Cohen, a jersey junkie, uniform analyst, if you will, whatever you want to call that niche group. He is...
Nerds.
Well...
Hey, I'm one of them.
If that's what you want to call it, then consider me one. Whatever it is, I am one. Either way, he confirmed some of the things that Kevin Sheehan has talked about with the uniforms. Glossy helmet returning, Super Bowl era stuff staying, like stuff that we kind of assumed was going to happen, but at least confirmed it. Said that we're going to see a burgundy version of the Super Bowl era, some more traditional style look for this team. What do you make of that? And also, if that's all you're going to get, like if you're not going to get a rename back to the old name, if you're not going to get a W replaced with the old logo, is that enough? Or are you still going to be frustrated and you're just kind of going to understand that for the rest of the time, you're going to have that frustration? What do you make? 301-230-0980. Let's get out to Little and Bowie. Little, what's going on?
Tobe, undisputed youngest in charge. Shout out to Mad Max. And Tobe, I thought I had a lot of jerseys, to be honest. Now, I got, you knock it out the box, Tobe. Now, look here. I got 12 jerseys, but before I leave this call, I'm going to tell you there's one jersey I got to have.
All right.
And I'm going to pay some money for it if I got to have it. All my jerseys Mitchell and Ness now, I'm told. I'm pretty sure your 157 got to be all Mitchell and Ness because you're a bad man if it is.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're wearing all real stuff, man. We're all wearing all real stuff.
There you go, my man. Now, look here. Now, I like the helmet as long as they leave the stripes on it. But guess what, Tobe? In high school, they used to tell you, look good, play good.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care rat ass with the uniforms look good, as long as they get out there and play some ball. Now, I'm going to say something, and I'm going to get off the line. You mentioned middle linebacker. I'm going to tell you now, I want to see what LaFleur got, number 57. He playing special teams because he been playing behind the gold jacket. But I think we got players on the team, Tobe, and I got to see this new coordinator emphasize his defensive scheme. Old Rooster say, it's not the scheme in fundamental. But guess what? Rooster got 11 players running on the field with like a chicken with the head cut off if it's not the scheme. You know, you got 11 players, Rooster.
Yeah.
Cock-a-doodle-doo like a chicken with the head cut off if it's not the scheme. So let's see what LaFleur got. Man, LaFleur been laying the wood on special teams for 2 years.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can hold the middle linebacker down.
Appreciate the phone call, man. Yeah. I'm not that interested in seeing Nick Bellore play linebacker. I'll let him stay as a special teamer. There's a reason he's had a career as a special teamer, but I am curious about some of the guys they have on the roster, just not necessarily Nick Bellore. Like, what does Jordan McGee look like in an increased role? What does Cam Medrano look if he actually gets on the field on defense? Is that someone that can actually fit? And you look at Durante Jones, he wants versatile players. I think you look at Medrano, he's kind of a hybrid linebacker safety. Remember Dominique Hampton was drafted in the first draft that Adam Peters had. He was more hybrid safety linebacker, if you understand what I'm saying, where he was more safety than linebacker, maybe 60-40 safety, but they're trying to play him at linebacker. Medrano's like 60-40 linebacker safety, right? Like he's undersized and can run. He's not a safety, but he plays linebacker, sort of deal. So maybe someone like that could be used. I'll be interested in his second year if he shows some growth. Eric is in North Carolina. Eric, what's going on?
Hey, guys. I just wanted to get a comment on your subject. First off, I love the fact they're going back to the old look uniforms. The name I've got over. I mean, the look had bothered me here recently more than the name, honestly. Now, I'm 57 years old. I love the Redskins, the old logo. That's what drew me in as a fan in the first place was the look, the old logo and the name back in the day. But no, I'm just stoked that they're going back to the old look. Now, the logo, the one they have now, no, the taco holder, I wish they got to come up with something better. My prediction is they're going to probably wear the W on the helmet this year, another year, and then they'll go to the spear eventually, full time, I think. The one that may go to an alternate this year. Because they're just, why would they tease us with this spear at the games and this and that? And,
yeah.
I think eventually that'll happen. The full-time logo, really, the spear. I just wish they would. That's what bothers me more. Even when they had the look of the uniforms from 2022, it was just that the W, the logo they were wearing that was more bothering me more than that look. But no, I go ahead.
Appreciate the phone call, Eric. Yeah, I'm glad to see that the look is returning. One thing that I don't fully understand is I don't fully understand the hatred for the W. I truly don't. Is it a great logo? Not really. Is it a horrible logo? Could it be worse? Absolutely. I mean, but I don't. It's a W. I don't know. I understand people are going to make jokes about it.
Feels generic.
It is generic. But like, what do you want? Do you want a super complex logo for Commanders? No one wants that because no one really likes Commanders.
True.
So you do the W for Washington. And I know for me personally, if I'm buying new gear, and if you know anything about me, I'm always buying new gear. I have, like, it's funny, Rooster, JP, they're always getting on me. They're like, do you own anything that isn't team gear? And the answer is 90% no.
Jersey whore.
I have lots and lots of team gear. Well, if I'm buying team gear, I'm more apt to buy something. The number one thing that I wish, and if anyone's over there listening that does gear over for the Commanders, can you please just put more Washington gear where it says Washington? My favorite hat that I own, and I wish I could buy another one because the one I have is signed by Santana, and I have to wear it all the time because I can't find the hat again anywhere. But if you could just sell gear that just says Washington, that's burgundy and gold, awesome. After that, I'm more likely to buy something that just has the W. The thing that I'm least likely to wear is anything that says Commanders. So I understand that there's a frustration about the logo, but I can't fully understand the idea that the logo is just that abhorrent that you can't wear it. Right? I just don't fully understand that one. I get that it's not the logo you fell in love with, and maybe you want something a little bit better, but I also don't know, like, it looks okay. Like, it's not anything that I'm attached to or anything, but I don't know. I just find the idea that, oh, you got to get that off the helmet. If you're saying put the spear on there, I can understand it, but we had a caller earlier from Tampa. I think his name was Ross. Like, just take everything off the side of the helmet. I can't get on board with that. Like, you got to have something on the side. I don't know. Like, I just don't think the W is as bad. 301-230-0980 if you'd like to hop in. We got some more callers. We'll stick on this uniform topic for a little bit longer. And then Daniel Jeremiah put out his mock draft 2.0, has an interesting pick for the Commanders at 7. We'll get into that as well. You're listening to the Kevin Sheehan Show. Toby Altizer sitting in. Can I tell you a story about this song real quick, Max?
Absolutely.
Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin Sheehan today. So I got my radio career started in Milwaukee. One of the coolest guys I worked with, really helped me in the industry. His name is Tim Allen, not the home improvement guy, not the actor.
Different Tim Allen.
Big fan of him. This was his theme song.
Yeah?
Now, the thing that stands out about him, he is a baseball postgame host that we used to do a baseball postgame show on my station in Milwaukee.
Okay.
We weren't the flagship, so we didn't use the official name, whatever, but he was really good. Learned a lot from him. He was legally blind.
Really?
And did the postgame show, and he was so good. You'd never know. He was so good at it.
I mean, I feel like baseball's the one sport where you could.
The one way that he did it that just so impressed me, and you understand this now working in the industry and having to talk on air and stuff.
Yeah.
He would have a recorder that he would record what happened in the inning as he's listening to Bob Uecker. And then he would record his own little summary at the end of the inning. You say, bottom fourth, Contreras flew out to right field, Adames homered, this, that. And then during the show, in order to recap, because he can't have visual notes, obviously, he would play in an earbud underneath his headphones, his own recap, and then continue talking on the air.
Wow.
Absolutely impressive.
That's nuts.
One of the guys that I would say shaped my radio career and what I've been able to do, Tim Allen. And every time I hear this song, I think of him. So there you go. There's a little bit of the Toby Altizer history lesson for you.
Little lure behind the scenes for Tobes.
301-230-0980 if you'd like to hop in. Speaking of history, the history of this football team looks like it might be getting embraced a little bit more with the uniforms going back to more of the Super Bowl era look. What do you make of that? We're going to get into Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft 2.0 here in just a couple of moments, but let's wrap up these phone calls here. Daryl is in Waldorf. Daryl, what's going on?
Hey, fellas, how you doing?
Doing great, man.
Good. So my thing is, you got a lot of older fans that won't embrace change. I mean, you got the old uniforms, but the name is different. I don't understand. And then the spear. I mean, what does a spear have to do with a commander? I mean, I'm on board with the Commanders. I mean, if they win, it doesn't matter what the name is, really.
Well, so real quick, are you someone that because the fact that they can't go back to Redskins, they can't put the logo on the helmet or likely aren't going to put the logo on the helmet, you're someone that says just go completely away from that and just don't look like them because you're almost insulting me? Is that kind of how you feel, or?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to go back to the old uniforms with a W on it. I mean, they're not the Redskins anymore, so it's like you holding on to something that's that you can't have.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I understand that. Appreciate the phone call. I understand that sentiment. I don't agree with it, but I do understand people that feel like you took my name, you took the team name, you took the logo. Don't try to pretend like you're something you aren't. I can understand that. I don't agree with that sentiment, but I would understand some people that feel that way, that are like, don't insult me by pretending that you're the Redskins when you're not. Cody is in Knoxville. Cody, what's going on?
Hey, man, how are you guys?
Doing great.
Hey, so just, I guess, to push back on that last caller's thoughts, I'm 35 years old, so I haven't seen really much winning in my lifetime. I've been a lifelong Redskins fan. But the one thing that the Redskins did give me was bonding time with my father. And so when I sit in the stadium and I see this, weak rebrand that we've had from the previous group, it made me feel like I was sitting through like a Hallmark movie about the Redskins where they couldn't use the brand.
Yeah.
And so any bit of nostalgia felt like it was gone. And last season, when we had the Super Bowl era uniforms, I felt that spark again, and it felt like I was sitting there with my dad, and just gave me a bit of, just nostalgia. And so that's why I still hold on to the previous brand, and I embrace them trying to bring back some of that feeling for the fans. I felt like the previous group, when they came up with this Commanders brand, they didn't really consider these feelings that we all have as fans. And for me, it's like I said, more than football. It's the memories that I have and the feelings that it gives me. And so I'm all for what they're doing, and I'm super thankful that this new ownership group is actually taking into consideration some of those feelings. And I'm hopeful. I have a 5-year-old daughter. I'm hopeful that, in 20, 25 years from now, when I sat there with her and, I can share some of those feelings that I had with my dad when I sat there and watched the games with him.
Yeah, appreciate the phone call, Cody. I think a lot of people feel that way. I think a lot of people feel that nostalgia of seeing the team look like the team that we all loved for decades and decades. And to have that ripped away so quickly and then to have something change so drastically that in a lot of ways it didn't look like your team. I think a lot of people will enjoy the fact that it looks more like the team that we had fallen in love with. And I like to think of myself as a rational person. I have biases. I'm a fan of this team, those sorts of things, but I like to think of myself as being able to be objective and rational in these sorts of things. And when I look at the way that this has gone with the logo and with the team name and those sorts of things, even if I agreed or disagreed, that really doesn't matter. I can understand how it ended up that they had to make these changes. And so understanding that, I don't want them to just go completely out of left field and completely change everything. Change what's necessary, but leave everything else the same. This is a team that has a long history and tradition. I didn't feel like they needed to necessarily uproot all of that to all of a sudden make up for the fact that they have to change a couple of key parts of this franchise. So going back and embracing some of the history is something that I really like. And I'm curious to see if there are going to be changes where you take the W off the side of the helmet, incorporate the spear a little bit more, even if it is going to frustrate some people in the fan base, like our previous caller a couple of calls ago. Like, I understand that feeling. I do. And there are some people that I just don't think you're going to be able to please if you're Josh Harris and company. They're still going to support the team, maybe not financially as much anymore. Maybe occasionally they'll go to a game, but they're not going to buy a jersey. They're not going to buy a sweatshirt, a T-shirt, anything of that nature. And unfortunately, I think that's something you're going to have to live with if you're them, because of the fact that a lot of bad faith. One, for so long, this team was bad. So some people just flat out lost the diehard interest that they'd had for the 80s and 90s. And, football has changed and people, it's not like the same that I grew up with, those sorts of things. That's going to happen as well. And then you throw on the fact that you've changed the name and those sorts of things. So I get that. But I enjoy the fact that they're going back and looking more like the team that I cheered for. And I can appreciate that because that's something that gets me emotional. I mean, frankly, when I first saw those jerseys unveiled, not necessarily worn on the field, but that they were going to wear them, even though we'd heard tips that they were likely going to go back and wear that sort of thing, I knew I was going to be emotional because I was going to be excited to buy a jersey and it was going to remind me of being a kid again. I was even more emotional than I thought. And I think a lot of fans felt that way. 301-230-0980 if you'd like to hop in. All right, let's move on from the jersey discussion. I want to get into Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. I want to get into some on-field football things. Daniel Jeremiah put out his second mock draft. I want to go through some of his logic and talk through where he ends up with Washington taking a new name that I haven't seen a lot of people throw to Washington at 7, mainly because he's generally been gone before their pick. But he threw out some logic here that I think is sound and could be something that Washington could look out for and potentially could end up with a really good player here at 7 that maybe a lot of people weren't expecting to be available at their pick. So we'll start at the top. No shocker. I think you can almost put this one in Sharpie. I'll say pen for now because maybe someone gets crazy and wants to throw a lot of picks their way and get this guy, and maybe they get their quarterback another way, but they're going to take Fernando Mendoza. The Raiders at 1 are going to take Fernando Mendoza. That's almost guaranteed. Like, if you wanted to go ahead and go on NFL.com or NFL Shop, whatever, and customize a number 15 Raiders jersey and put Mendoza on the back, I don't think you're going to look at it and say, well, I got that one wrong. I think you're pretty safe in doing so. So Fernando Mendoza is going to the Raiders at number 1. Here's where it gets interesting, and I think this is where the discussion becomes interesting for who Washington could end up picking. Because this is a guy that a lot of fans were expecting to fall to 7, potentially be a guy that Washington would be interested in. Number 2, Daniel Jeremiah, his mock draft 2.0. He has David Bailey going to the New York Jets.
Whoa.
And this is what I think is interesting about his logic for this. So I was listening to a little bit of what he had to say about why this is the pick here. Arvell Reese has been the traditional thought as the first non-quarterback. His unique ability as a pass rusher, Still a little bit raw there, but you see really big flashes of potential from Arvell Reese every time you turn on Ohio State film. But he's a bit of a hybrid guy. And it's not necessarily that he's not going to be able to play full-time edge in the pros, but we didn't see him play full-time edge in college. We didn't. We saw him play off-ball linebacker with a mix of edge in college. And so just assuming that he's going to be able to play on the edge is a little presumptuous. Maybe not big time, not stupid or irrational or reckless, but it is something that you haven't necessarily seen him do full-time. And so the thought process here is, with the New York Jets, a team that I have no idea how, but finished the year last year with 0 interceptions. Max, I still don't even get how that's possible. I don't get how nobody was overthrown and the safety picked it off. There's no tip by a linebacker or D lineman and the ball's up in the air and someone else comes down with it. Nothing. You couldn't come up with 1 interception. So they need pass rush help big time, obviously, which is funny because they've spent first-round picks over the last couple of years on pass rush help. Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, they've spent on pass rushers. But if they want to get someone that can affect the quarterback, David Bailey is your best option as a true edge. Not that Arvell Reese can't be there, but there's still questions. Like, you haven't necessarily seen him play full-time there. If you want a guy that played edge rusher full-time and is going to be impactful and the top guy at that spot, it's going to be David Bailey. So that's why they go Bailey there. I think a lot of Commanders fans, Washington fans, have wanted him at 7. Here he goes, number 2 to the Jets, so he's off the board. 3rd, Francis Maui-Noa goes to the Cardinals, right tackle out of Miami. It's interesting that he has him this high. I know some people are questioning whether he's actually a tackle or a guard. Regardless, he mauls people at the point of attack. Good at right tackle. They need a right tackle. They've got a left tackle in Paris Johnson, so they need a right tackle. So they're fine there then at right tackle with Maui-Noa going to the Cardinals at 3. Pick number 4, Tennessee, Ruben Bain. And it fits an identity that they're trying to create if they do this sort of a pick, where think of some of the guys they'd have on that D-line. You'd have Jeffrey Simmons, and you think of the way that he plays football. That's a tough, hard-nosed dude in the middle of the defense. Devondre Sweat, one of the biggest dudes in the NFL. I think he's listed at 366, the big old D tackle out of Texas from a couple of years ago. And then you'd add in Ruben Bain, who was just a bulldog. Like, you can question the pass rushing chops and those sorts of things. The thing you can't question is his toughness and effort. That dude is a game wrecker. And so I'm very interested to see if they would go that direction. So if they would go with Bain there, that's 2 of your top targets off the board. David Bailey goes to the Jets at 2. And then number 4, Ruben Bain goes to the Titans. What's interesting for Washington is with their win in Week 18, they dropped from pick number 5 to pick number 7. And generally that would be a bad thing, Max, but I don't know that it matters all that much. Because with the 5th pick, the Giants go with Carnell Tate. I don't think they're shopping in the same section you are. Because they're not going to take David Bailey. They're not going to take Ruben Bain. They don't need edge rushers. If Arvell Reese is there, maybe they take him. But again, that's more of an edge rusher. I don't know that they're going Arvell Reese. So they're probably not shopping in the same section unless you want Caleb Downs. And maybe they would take him. But they're probably taking a receiver, or maybe they'll take a lineman. So I don't think that really affects you.
But I could so see them doing the Landon Collins thing and just snaking Caleb 2 picks before us.
Yeah.
It would pain me.
They definitely could. So if you want Caleb Downs, then maybe you have to watch out for what the Giants are going to do. And then the Browns are also ahead of them. It's another team you drop below. And I don't think the Browns are necessarily taking your guy either.
They have other needs.
They're going to probably take an offensive lineman. That's their top need because they've got to figure out how to get this thing set up. And who knows what they're going to do at quarterback. I would assume they're just going to run it back with Shedeur and potentially, I don't know what they're going to do with Deshaun Watson. But I don't think that they're all that interested in trying to figure out quarterback this year because it's so difficult. And the 27 quarterback class is loaded. So they go Spencer Fano in this pick, with this pick in DJ's mock draft 2.0. So again, Carnell Tate goes to the Giants, receiver out of Ohio State. Washington's not going to go receiver, or not likely at all. Browns go Fano, right tackle out of Utah. 7th pick, that leaves the very versatile, very interesting, presumably one of the top guys in this draft that isn't a quarterback, Arvell Reese, falls to pick number 7, and Washington takes him. This is the first time I've really seen this mocked up from one of these reputable draft experts. And Daniel Jeremiah has talked about, when you do some of these mock drafts, at times you'll do this as an exercise at times versus, hey, this for sure is going to happen. It's more so a what if David Bailey goes to? What if Tennessee goes Reuben Bain? But Daniel Jeremiah also does a good job of being prudent, not necessarily throwing out stupid stuff. It's like clickbaity, right? Like, he doesn't do anything like that. So I think this is a real possibility. And when you look at this, because I hadn't necessarily considered this, but think about how this works out. Realistically, if you want Arvell Reese, which I think for a lot of people around the league, a lot of people that have followed the draft, he's probably the top value in terms of positional value and ability of anybody in the draft outside of the quarterback position, because Fernando Mendoza would be at the top, right? Quarterback scarcity, understand those things. But then after that, he might not be the better football player than Caleb Downs. He might not be the better football player than Jeremiah Love. But when you throw in positional value and being able to get after the passer, he's probably a higher value than those guys because of the position. But when you consider this, if you look through the top 6 picks in this draft, the realistic, I would say there's a few teams that are contenders to take this guy, that are threats to take this guy over you getting him at 7. The Jets would be one. He's been mocked there a lot. But I do think it is solid logic to think that they could go with David Bailey there. I don't think the Cardinals are going to be interested in taking a guy like Arvell Reese unless they just say best player available, let me take that guy. But I do think they need offensive line help, so they'll probably go there. Tennessee is on the board at 4. Robert Saleh might be able to feel like he can unlock what Arvell Reese could do, but that's another threat there at 4. But they could go a lot of different directions. It wouldn't shock me at all if they decided to go wide receiver at 4 and go get a guy that they want so that they can help out Cam Ward. So that's not going to really affect Washington there. I don't think the Giants are going with an edge rusher if that's what you're interested in. Caleb Downs is maybe the threat, like Max was saying, that they could snipe Washington if they were really in on Downs. But they're probably not taking an edge rusher. They've got so many of those. And the Browns, I don't see them necessarily going edge rusher either. Maybe they could go that way if they view the edge rusher or top defensive guy is that much better than anyone else they're going to get. But I tend to believe, and you see it in a lot of mocks, they're going to go offensive line there. So realistically, not to say other teams can't do it, but your major threats of maybe like a over 75, 80% threshold, they could take your guy. There's only 2. The Jets and the Titans. And so if they ultimately go David Bailey, Reuben Bain, or the Jets go David Bailey and the Titans go Jordan Tyson, you could have a choice between Arvell Reese and a Reuben Bain. And I think it gets interesting. I want to talk about Arvell Reese, though, in particular here in just a couple of moments. Because Arvell Reese to Washington is a very interesting fit. And it's something I hadn't considered a ton because it felt like he was going to go before their pick at 7. But now that you look at it and you've seen a very reputable person have Reese mocked to Washington at 7, how does he fit into Washington's defense? Let's talk about that next, as well as if you want to hop in and react to what DJ has with Arvell Reese fall into 7. Feel free to call in at 301-230-0980. But I'll give you my thoughts on Arvell Reese and how he fits into the new scheme for Washington's defense. You're listening to Kevin Sheehan Show. Toby Altizer sitting in on the Team 980. Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980. Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin today. He'll be back at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Daniel Jeremiah put out his second mock draft and had a interesting name falling to Washington at 7. Someone I haven't necessarily seen mocked to Washington, mainly because he's been gone by generally the second pick. I think if you looked at a majority of mock drafts put out across all types of publications, it generally starts Fernando Mendoza, which I would bet that 99.9, if not 100% of mock drafts have. And then number 2 to the Jets, most of them, well over 50% of them would have Arvell Reese going to the Jets at number 2. But if the Jets want the true traditional pass rusher from the edge that played there every down in college, David Bailey's more your guy than Arvell Reese, even though Arvell Reese might have a little bit of a higher ceiling just because of some of his versatility. Now, speaking of versatility, that's what intrigues me the most about Arvell Reese if he were to fall to Washington. Because one of the things that I can dream on when you get Durante Jones coming in as a D coordinator who loves to have versatility, because during his introductory press conference, one of the main things that he mentioned is a trait that he wants to see from his defenders specifically for his scheme, versatility. And you think about watching the Vikings, versatility is exactly what they need guys to have to thrive on. Think of Andrew Van Ginkel. He kills Washington, by the way. I hope we never see that guy again.
I hope we see him in burgundy and gold.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
I can see him in the burgundy and gold and the Super Bowl era throwbacks. I can deal with that. I can't see him any other way, because otherwise he's somehow going to have a pick 6 and ruin our lives. Like, I don't understand
It'll happen.
how he does it to this team. Like, he's good against everyone else. He is a Hall of Famer against Washington. Regardless, guys like Andrew Van Ginkel, when you think of what his skill set is, can rush the passer, can drop in coverage, can do a little bit of everything. You think of some of the safeties and what they have, some of the corners and the linebackers and what they have. The style of defense they're going to play requires versatility, because the nature of disguising coverages is you're putting guys in a different position than normal, so they're out of position. They have to be able to move. So you need linebackers, outside guys, edge rushers that can cover a little bit, that can move a little bit, that have speed, that can also get after the passer. So you need guys that have versatility. That's what they're going to ask their guys to do, because they're going to mix up coverages. They're going to put 6 or 7 guys across the line of scrimmage. They're going to do all these different things on the defense to confuse that offense. So having a guy like Arvell Reese potentially fall to them with the 7th overall pick, I think would be a perfect fit for what they're trying to do. Maybe even more so than a traditional pass rusher like a Reuben Bain or like a David Bailey. Not to say that you don't need some of those guys, but the only argument against an Arvell Reese would be maybe that you already have a guy like an Arvell Reese in your building in Frankie Louvu, but you're not necessarily thinking about when you pick a guy like Arvell Reese, you're thinking about the long term versus just this year, because who knows what Louvu's future is for this team after just this upcoming season. But regardless, having guys that can do a little bit of everything, because having a guy on the edge like Arvell Reese, if you watched Ohio State, their defense this year, I think the thing that popped out most to me watching Reese wasn't necessarily his pass rush chops, which would be the big negative, I think, for him, is he's going to have to work on some of those moves to get better as a traditional pass rusher off the edge. But the thing that stood out to me that is really, really intriguing is there's not maybe a guy in this draft from that position that sets an edge better than Arvell Reese. That dude is so physical on the outside. A pulling guard, a tight end, it stands no chance. The pulling guard comes over. He's going to meet them head on and set the edge. He's going to push that tackle and set the edge against the run. He's so strong in that sense. And so I think he does a fantastic job in that sense as a run defender on the edge. Does a great job there. I think some of the production that dipped as the season went on, specifically at the end of the year. I mean, you go look back at the Big Ten championship game. He's barely in the stat sheet. I think he had 1 tackle. But the reason is not necessarily because he wasn't effective and wasn't impactful, but the way that they used him was as a quarterback spy, which I don't know who I am. I'm not anybody to question what Matt Patricia was doing with their Ohio State defense. They were one of the best I've seen in college football in a long time. So he can do whatever he wants. But I would have loved to have seen him rush the passer a little bit more. But they used him more as a quarterback spy in those big games at the end of the year. So that's kind of why some of the numbers dip. But even when he was as a quarterback spy, like Mendoza would try to escape the pocket, and his closing speed was fantastic. But having that flexibility for a guy like Arvell Reese, where, like I just said, he's really good against the run, can set a great edge. There does need to be some work on him as just a traditional pass rusher. But I think in a scheme like this, where there is some uncertainty of who's coming, who's not, dropping into coverage, those sorts of things, maybe that could help him a little bit in terms of that unpredictability. Just allows him to get maybe more of a runway so that he can evolve as a pass rusher as time goes on. But as a rookie, he's not expected to just line up as an edge and beat the tackle one-on-one. But he also fits this scheme because of some of his flexibility in terms of what he was doing at Ohio State, where he dropped into coverage quite a bit. He was an off-ball linebacker for the Buckeyes. So in this scheme, you're going to have your edge rushers or the guy standing up on the edge. They're going to drop into coverage at times. They're going to cover the flat. They might cover a little bit down the field as well. They might drop into the middle of the field. You don't know. I mean, that's truly the thing about this system with Durante Jones. If they're bringing the Flores scheme, and I'm sure there's going to be elements of other people that he's worked with, but I would bet that this looks a lot like what Brian Flores does. Part of the Flores scheme is I have no idea what's going on. You have no idea what's going on. The only people that have an idea of what's going on is the guys on the field, the 11 guys that are out there for the defense. And even then, sometimes it's so chaotic. It looks like they don't even know what's going on. It's structured chaos. So having guys that can do a little bit of everything, which I think Arvell Reese fits there, this guy can drop into coverage. He's not going to be uncomfortable. He did this a lot in college. He did this a ton. That was more his primary position than edge rusher, being a linebacker. So I think getting some of that versatility with Arvell Reese and then seeing him develop into being a better pass rusher, I think that's really cool. And then another aspect of this, because generally when you hear hybrid or tweener or some stuff like that, that throws up a major red flag for me. It does. And it's more so protecting myself from it. I've got this new philosophy when it comes to like the NBA draft, Max, that whenever I see a guard who is ridiculously athletic but is a questionable shooter, that's my archetype, but I got to steer clear in the modern NBA. I just can't do it. It's a major flag, red flag. Like Trey Johnson was the one that everybody wanted here for most part. I liked Ace Bailey, those sorts of things. But the guy that caught my eye that I had to tell myself no on, and he's actually shooting the ball okay so far in his NBA career, but Jeremiah Fierce, the kid that just could get downhill and dominate going down to the bucket, but was questionable as a shooter. I had to tell myself, no, don't do it. Major red flag. You can't do it. Similar thing that happens to me in the NFL draft is whenever you hear tweener, hybrid, mix, like those sorts of things, I'm a sucker for those. Like in the Chase Young draft, if they wouldn't have drafted Chase Young, you know how quickly I would have drafted Isaiah Simmons? I love those tweener type players. And so I have to be careful. Whenever I hear that, red flag goes up like, Toby, chill out a little bit. Let's be rational about this. Make sure it's correct. But the comp that you get for Arvell Reese that people have thrown out, you'll get different names. But I would say the name that a lot of people immediately throw out, and if you got this guy, then I would run the card in if he's there at 7. The name that you get a lot is Micah Parsons. You do. It's the name that people have thrown out as a comp because of the fact that off-ball linebacker at Penn State, edge rusher, versatile, move him around. If he was Micah Parsons, that'd be fantastic. I'm not expecting him to be Micah Parsons. But if there was a guy that knows how to use a guy like Micah Parsons that has that kind of a skill set, you know who would? Dan Quinn. And so having that kind of a guy in the building to work with Durante Jones to understand, look, these are some of the skill sets that I used Micah in. These are some of the ways that we were able to develop him as a pass rusher. And we used him in these various roles. Understanding that they don't run the same scheme as Durante Jones, but those two working together can figure out how to work this guy and make it so that he can be the best that he can possibly be, makes him incredibly intriguing. I still kind of think that he goes before Washington's pick at 7. I kind of think he does. But if he's available, I think this is a one that you potentially just run the card in. And I'm a Caleb Downs guy through and through. I would probably take Caleb Downs above him, understanding that the positional value and those sorts of things. But I don't think I'd be in the majority there. I think most people would prefer them to go get a difference maker near the line of scrimmage. And if Arvell Reese is there, that'd be fantastic. Someone in the chat, truth be told, 6020 says, He might not have the motor that Micah has in the fourth quarter. Maybe he doesn't have that type of motor because Micah's almost one of one in that sense, but I don't think there'd be any questions about his motor. I don't think there'd be any questions about this guy's effort. I think if you watch this dude at Ohio State, he is flying around the entire football game. So maybe he doesn't have Micah's motor because I think throwing comparisons on a guy like Micah is a little tough for Arvell Reese, because to me, if I was asked who I would take to start a football team right now on the defensive side, it's tough not to say Myles Garrett. So I've had to change my tune a little bit after what he did last season. But after that, I take Micah. Versatility, his ability to get after the passer, his effort. Micah's incredible. So to me, Micah's a top 3-4 edge rusher in the sport, maybe top 5 defensive player in the sport. So throwing that on Arvell Reese is a little bit tough. But I think when you say play style of Micah Parsons, I think it's a little bit better. Similar to how people threw the Mahomes comparison on Caleb Williams. Well, he was not Patrick Mahomes, but play style reminds you a little bit of Patrick Mahomes. I think it's a similar thing here with Arvell Reese. Is he Micah Parsons? No. Can he play the game a little like Micah Parsons in terms of play style? Maybe not as well. Sure. Is he Micah Parsons light? Maybe. So I think it's interesting. What would you make of this pick if they ended up getting Arvell Reese at 7? 301-230-0980. Because we've seen David Bailey, and I think, if we did another show where we talked about David Bailey, open up the phone lines, everybody like, yeah. David Bailey, great. Ruben Bain, great. I think some people would be up in arms if it were Caleb Downs, or we could talk about Jeremiah Love, those sorts of things. But Arvell Reese, this is the first time I've seen him mocked to Washington at 7. What do you make of that? 301-230-0980. Max, I'm curious, your first thoughts. When you hear Arvell Reese mocked to Washington, one of the most reputable, if not the most reputable draft analyst for NFL.com, Daniel Jeremiah, has him coming to Commanders at 7. That's not like it's some fluky thing that, someone's throwing something out of left field here. Like, this legitimately could happen. Arvell Reese, what do you make?
So I haven't done a ton of tape watching on Arvell Reese, but that's because you don't need to. The kid's so damn good.
Yeah.
But you would have to ask the question, why did he fall to 7? Because I feel like that when you get into the weeds on stuff like that, I feel like a lot of times it comes down to very small things, whether that be like draft interviews or stuff like that. And that small stuff can turn into big stuff down the line. But I would definitely, I'd be interested in Arvell Reese, obviously, coming to Washington, but it's the sliding from a projected number 2 to 7. It would concern me just a little bit. I understand that like the teams in front of us have different needs, but honestly, I'm also a big believer in drafting good players as opposed to just, trying to fill holes. So it would concern me a little bit that he would fall all the way to 7, but man, I'm going to get behind anybody you draft out of Ohio State's defense from this past year.
So here's what's interesting. Just looking at a couple of things, and take this for what it's worth. I mean, it's just some comparison and doesn't necessarily mean a ton, but Lance Zierlein does a lot of the stuff for NFL.com in terms of writing up their prospect profiles. He puts the grades on these guys and different things. So he has his prospect grade as a 7.04, which is equivalent to being a Pro Bowler in the future. Last year, the presumed top edge rusher, guy that everyone wanted, went to the Giants with the 3rd pick, Abdul Carter, had a grade slightly below that at 7 flat. So that's the caliber of guy you're looking at, is someone that was talked about like Abdul Carter. That's the kind of caliber of guy you're getting. Now, a quote on here from an AFC executive on NFL.com says he can play from depth or rush, but in my opinion, you need to choose one and build from there. And I think to answer your question there, Max, if he falls to 7, I think that right there is the question. I don't think the ability is a question. I think the understanding of where he exactly fits is the question. And so if you draft a guy like an Arvell Reese, you better have a plan put in place. And generally, like I said before, that immediately raises a red flag where I'm like, because we've seen guys before like Isaiah Simmons, like those guys that are hybrids that they don't have a great plan. They come in and they end up being a bust because they're trying to be developed in 3 or 4 different positions and they can't figure it out. But I will say, the main thing that would sell me on the fact that you go after a guy like Reese, obviously the talent, but if you are a little bit worried about his tweenerish build, and he's solid, 6'4", 243, like I said, plays the run really well, heavy-handed, willing to get his hands dirty in the run game. But if you're a little bit worried about him being in between, if there's a guy that understands how to use a guy like that, it is Dan Quinn. And so having that guy in the building to help out with Durante Jones as they're building the defense and putting him into the scheme there, I think it's a really, really good fit. And I'd be very interested to see, because versatility is a big thing, and having a guy that can do a little bit of everything. And on top of having Dan Quinn, who's worked with a guy who has a lot of those same sort of traits, very intriguing. And I think it'd be a home run, A-plus type of pick if Washington were to get this guy at pick number 7. 301-230-0980 if you'd like to hop in. Daniel Jeremiah put out a second mock draft yesterday as Arvell Reese coming to the Commanders. What do you make of it? Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin Sheehan.
All right, happy Wednesday, everybody. We start off with Team USA. Michaela Schifrin earns the gold in the Alpine Slalom skiing event, bringing Team USA's gold medal count up to 7. To NBA, Kyrie Irving shutting it down for the remainder of the NBA season. He now sets his sight on a return in 26 and 27. Plus, the Kansas City Chiefs, they have reworked Patrick Mahomes' deal to give themselves an extra $43.5 million in cap space heading into the 26th season. Mahomes will now carry a cap hit of $85 million in 2027. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch programs like Take Command all off season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us, and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Fired up for USA Hockey a little bit later today. They're going to take on Sweden in the quarterfinals coming up at 3 o'clock. We may have a developing situation right now, though, in Milan. Watching a little bit of hockey about halfway through the second period. Czechia has a 2-1 lead over Canada. Knocked them out of the tournament.
We've been scoreless so far in this second period. How far are we? We're about halfway through, too.
About halfway through. So
in a dogfight.
Something to watch. Something that'll be interesting. Doesn't really matter if Washington, I'm so used to cheering for our team. If the U.S. doesn't take care of business against Sweden, it won't matter. But regardless, I'd maybe enjoy to watch Canada lose, even though it feel bad for Willie. And LT's not in net, so I don't feel as bad right now.
Yeah, no, it makes it a little bit easier when you're watching Jordan Bennington take all these shots.
Yeah, like if Bennington gives up 8 goals, I don't really care.
Yeah, no, I hate him anyway, so it's like,
Either way. Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin Sheehan today on the Team 980 on the Kevin Sheehan Show, 301-230-0980 if you'd like to hop in. Talking about Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft 2.0. Arvell Reese is who he has Washington taking at 7. The new name feels like that's been thrown to Washington, even though he's not new to a lot of people. Hasn't generally been available at 7 for Washington to take. What do you make of that? Kurt's in Hagerstown. Kurt, what's going on?
Hey, my man. Good topic. I love it, man. We could talk draft 24/7.
Love it.
And let me give you a quick rundown. I'm like a defensive guy. You could probably talk me into drafting an offensive lineman almost every single year, man. That's just kind of how I look to build, like from the inside out. So let me give you a quick breakdown. Reese, Bailey, and Bain Jr. clearly are the tier 1 guys. Bailey is probably the elite pass rusher. I could actually see him going 2 because of his extremely long arms. He's also smart. When he's not getting to the quarterback, he kind of knows how to sit back and spy him and get his arms up and bat down passes, which I think a lot of people are going to love. Bain Jr. is a game wrecker. Before the season started, he was probably my top edge guy. If you saw the first game against Notre Dame, he wrecked the game. And the guy on the other side is not that bad either. I see him going in the second round. Moving on towards Reese, I see him kind of dropping a little bit because of what you said of being a tweener. He's great at setting the edge, but we're not sure if he's that elite pass rusher that people are looking for. I'm kind of hoping that Bain's short arms has him drop and he's available for us because personally, I just think he's an animal on the edge. I just love him. In the way he plays.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to hate me at the end of all of this that I said. If Jeremiah Love is available, you cannot miss on this guy because I'm going to tell you right now, you're drafting Bradley Chubb over Nick Chubb. If you take one of these edge guys, you're taking somebody who could be like a Brian Arakpo or, even a later in the career Khalil Mack, who's great, but you can have a Saquon Barkley, a Derrick Henry, a Christian McCaffrey type of freak that can take so much pressure off of Jaden Daniels, and you can kind of center the offense around him. And he doesn't need the ball that much to break. He's a home run hitter every time he touches. He can grind in between the tackles. He can catch the ball. He's the best running back I've ever evaluated, man. So I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, appreciate the phone call, Kurt. Now look, we started the show. I mentioned this. I was watching some Jeremiah Love tape yesterday, and I've said he's the best player in the draft alongside Caleb Downs, and I still don't think I was high enough on this guy. He is fantastic. So I wouldn't do it. I don't think it'd be wise for Washington to do it. But walking away with the best player in the draft isn't the worst thing. I would probably raise a little bit of hell if they did draft him at pick number 7, because I don't think that's the right process. But this is an interesting draft in a lot of ways. Truth be told, in the chat said Screg said Styles is a more impactful linebacker from Ohio State. That's what makes this such an interesting draft. Those discussions right there. You want to know why Styles is behind Reese on draft boards? It has nothing to do with production on the football field. It has more to do with what these guys are in terms of positional value. Because if you went with the top players in this draft, I mean, not to say that Arvell Reese is like, I think there is a debate between Styles and Reese in terms of who was more impactful, who's better. But if you're going off of just best football players, Madden rating style, and you were lining up all these guys and had nothing to do with positional value, the top guys in this draft are not generally the top guys because of their position. Like we talked about, I love Caleb Downs. I think he'd be at the top with me with Jeremiah Love. They're probably somewhere in the 90s if you're going Madden ratings type of thing. Like that's where they could get to. I think a Sonny Styles is not far behind them because I don't disagree. You watch that that Ohio State defense, and Sonny Styles was everywhere. I think at the end of the year, I think he ends up charted with one missed tackle as an off-ball linebacker, converted safety, so he's not bad in coverage, and he's massive in size, very similar to Arvell Reese. I mean, if you watched any Buckeyes games this year, immediately those two dudes stood out just from the sheer size of them in the middle of that defense. So, yeah, I don't think it's crazy to look at some of these guys and say, well, you know, this guy's better, but that's not necessarily how it always works in the NFL. You're going to go with a position that can fix some problems, that can be a big-time help because they're at an edge rusher. Or, frankly, because do I draft Sonny Styles at 7 or do I go sign Quay Walker in free agency? Those sorts of deals where if I were to try to sign Trey Hendrickson in free agency, you have to pony up a lot more money than going out and getting Quay Walker. And I can get almost a similar type of deal versus if I went for Trey Hendrickson off the edge and then drafted Sonny Styles versus drafting Arvell Reese or David Bailey and signing Quay Walker, there's a lot more money saved by going with option 2 there. And now you can add in, maybe you sign another safety, maybe you sign a corner to go along with those guys. So that's kind of how that plays in, even though you might argue that some of these guys are actually better football players. Here's one that's interesting, and I've kind of been up and down on David Bailey. The stats don't lie. I was looking through some stuff yesterday because I was just doing a little extra draft stuff. I was feeling the mood of watching some of these guys and just seeing what they did in college. You want to know something that sold me a little more on David Bailey than I'd been ever, you know, I was in on him, but I've been kind of up and down because I'm like, I don't know. I think he'd be okay against the run, those sorts of things. He looks like he's more so just a speed rusher. Does he have other moves, whatever? Last season, let me see how many games they played. I'm not exactly sure. I think it'd probably be somewhere around 14 games, something like that. He only finished without a sack in 3 of those games. He didn't have a sack against Oklahoma State. He didn't have a sack against BYU, and he didn't have a sack against West Virginia. And those are the only 3 games that he didn't have at least a half sack. Otherwise, starting the year, half sack, and then a sack, 2 against Houston, 3 against Kansas, 2 against Arizona State, sack against Kansas State, 1 against UCF, 1 against BYU, 1 against Oregon in the playoffs. This dude gets a sack every game. You sign me up for a guy that's going to get at least a half sack every game and hopefully a full sack. That's 15 sacks every year, basically. 12, 15 every year. Not to say that that translates immediately to the NFL and he's going to do the same thing, but very interested. Very interested. Let's keep talking about the draft. 301-230-0980 if you'd like to hop in. Daniel Jeremiah has Washington taking Arvell Reese. I do want to talk about a potential trade down scenario and if there really are any. What do you need to be rooting for if you're Washington for this process to potentially maybe trade down? Because I do think that's their best option if it were to present itself. So we'll talk about that next. Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin Sheehan on the Team 980. Final hour of the Kevin Sheehan Show on a Wednesday. Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin today. Quick update. Canada scored on their power play, so now it's tied up at 2 apiece. Just under 6 minutes to go in the second period. Winner advances to the semis. United States plays later today at 3 o'clock against Sweden in the quarters. So we'll keep you up to date on that one if anything else happens before we get out of here. Rooster coming up at 1 o'clock. Right now, let's continue to talk about the NFL draft. 301-230-0980 if you'd like to hop in on the Team 980 listener line. Again, 301-230-0980. Daniel Jeremiah put out a second mock draft, has Washington getting Arvell Reese with the 7th overall pick. Continue talking about that a little bit more, but which of the guys, if you had the option, Arvell Reese, David Bailey, Ruben Bain, would you take? If you want to hop in on that question, feel free to call in. Also, I want to get into a scenario for Washington that I think it's still far-fetched. I don't see them having much of an opportunity to trade down just because of the way that the draft has fallen. The top guys of the draft, the position they're at, I don't see a lot of teams really being interested in trading up because that generally happens for a quarterback. There's not really a second quarterback in this draft, especially when you look at next year's draft. I think a lot of teams that would potentially be a little more aggressive for a quarterback, they'll probably play in a patient approach with what next year's quarterback class looks like. I think if you're asking someone, would they rather take a chance this year with Ty Simpson, or would you rather just wait a year and potentially even get the 3rd or 4th quarterback next year, maybe even the 5th quarterback next year, and feel better about that? I think that's a real possibility. So we can talk about that as well. I think there's really very few scenarios, but there's one that I could lay out that maybe Washington could find a way to trade down because I think that would be in their best interest if anything presented itself. 301-230-0980 if you'd like to hop in. Lap is in D.C. Lap, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, bro? Reese, I haven't really seen too much of him. I mean, he's definitely probably a top, probably 3 or 4 or 5 best defensive player in the draft. I mean, I would take Bailey or Downs or Bain over him. That's just my opinion. If I'm going to go defense, but if I'm gonna go offense, I definitely want Tate or Jeremiah Love. Hey, quick point I wanted to say about the jersey thing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, like, I know a lot of the old school fans, and I'm old school too, but I'm in my early 40s. But I'm saying I know a lot of people complain about the name and this and that. I think the Harris Group is doing a better job in trying to, honor us and at least talk about it and at least have some type of plan. You know what I'm saying? At least with the jerseys. I never really liked it. I never liked the Redskins symbol. I always liked the Spears, and I thought the W with the feather was nice. And then we're getting our team back in D.C., which is good too. So I think they're making progress. So I think the fans shouldn't be too hard. And I just want to win in franchise, bro.
Ain't that the
really
truth?
Want to win a franchise, but it would be so cool with the Spears on the helmet for sure. I think that is just a dope look. Or like I said, the W with the feather. Just find a way to kind of honor the young and the new. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
And like back in the day, I just never liked our colors because it's like if we're going to be the only team to have burgundy and gold, at least jazz it up. Because you remember when Seattle was going through their little phase of changing in their jersey, and then everybody started changing, and we still had the same.
Hey, I like that old look.
So I was like, bro.
I like that old look. Appreciate the phone call, Lap. Yeah, I think you could very well get a alternate jersey that has the spear on the side of the helmet, and maybe ultimately they do scrap the W on the side for a spear full time. So that's something I wouldn't rule out completely. I don't know that happens this year. Like some of these changes might happen, but be interesting to see if that is something that does come down the line. He mentioned Caleb Downs. Real quick, Jordan Reed just put out a mock draft for ESPN not that long ago as well. I believe it was yesterday. And he was on ESPN talking about if they were to go with Caleb Downs as the pick. Here's Jordan Reed breaking that down.
The next match that I'm going to go to is out in Washington with Ohio State safety Caleb Downs, who I think is one of the best players in this year's draft class. You're going to hear positional value a lot with him, but if we're stacking the talent in this year's draft, Caleb Downs arguably is the best one in this year's class. And the big problem that Washington had last year was explosive plays given up in the secondary. So Caleb Downs will go a long way to improving Durante Jones's defense now.
That's the big thing, like he said, positional value. But if you want a guy versatile who can help on the back end, do a little bit of everything, and he frees you up a little bit, because if you draft this guy, or at least if you have the plans to draft this guy, if you want him to play the nickel position like you've seen Nick Emanwari do, he's not the size of Emanwari. But if you want a safety that can play the run game, can do a little bit of everything, which is now kind of the sexy way of playing defense, where I'm never going to leave my nickel package. I'm never going to put a third backer on the field. I'm just going to leave it with two and then leave the safety coming down into the box as like a nickel corner as my third linebacker of sorts. He's going to have to play the run. He's going to have to be impactful in that sense, and he'll blitz a little bit. He'll be in coverage. He'll do a little bit of everything. Caleb Downs can do that. You want him to play down in the box more as like a nickel linebacker or a dime linebacker or something of that nature, he can do that. You want him to play a deep half, he can do that. You want him to play deep middle, he can do that. He can do everything. So he's not going to wow you in terms of size like Emanwari. He's not going to wow you in terms of his ability at the combine and 40 test it, all those things. But he's a smart football player. And by the way, he's played in a pro-style defensive scheme like when he played at Ohio State. I mean, Matt Patricia is going to run a lot of stuff that was run at the NFL level. So he understands all that stuff. He was incredibly smart. Patricia gave him a little bit of freedom to do some stuff that if he saw something, he could freelance a little bit if he knew he could go make a play. And to have a guy like Matt Patricia, who coached with one of the smartest coaches of all time and Bill Belichick defensively, so on that side of the football, so he has that experience to work alongside a guy like Caleb Downs and to give him that freedom to say, hey, if you see it and you're smart enough to see it, go make a play. I think it shows you his football IQ. So you're going to get a really smart football player who could impact almost right away. So I love Caleb Downs. He's long been at the top of my board, even though he's a safety. But that is something to consider, and I think that's interesting. You just look at the number of guys they could get. I think they'll get an impactful guy defensively. And that, to me, is the main reason why a couple callers ago, he's like, oh, yeah, take Jeremiah Love. He's probably the best player in the draft. But you need so much help on defense. And I can probably find an impactful running back in free agency or even later on in the draft. I mean, you saw it last year. Bill is nowhere close to Jeremiah Love. But using a 7th pick versus a 7th round pick, I don't know that the value of Jeremiah Love is 250 picks better than what you're going to get with Bill almost, right? So I don't know. It's an interesting discussion. But I would love for them to get one of these defenders, whether it's Downs, Bain, heck, even Styles, Bailey, Reese. There's going to be an impactful defender they can get at 7. So I'm really, really intrigued by that. One thing that I'm curious about seeing, though, it's something we haven't really talked a lot about, frankly, because the chances of it happening or the scenarios for it to happen have kind of dwindled since the season ended and we knew where everyone was locked in at and all those things. I still think a trade down is their best scenario. I still think trading down from the 7th overall pick would be their best option. The hardest part about this is I don't know that there's anybody to trade up for. Because when you think about traditionally trade ups in the NFL draft for quarterback, that's obvious. There's no quarterback outside of Mendoza, and the Raiders aren't going to trade down out of their pick. So no one's trading up for a second quarterback, likely. Maybe you'd move up for an offensive tackle if they're a standout. There aren't any standout tackles, in my opinion, that are, oh, we've got to move up to get that guy. Or an edge rusher that's like Myles Garrett, you would trade a ton of stuff to go up and get, and there isn't one of those. So with that being said, I don't see them having a real scenario. But let me lay one out for you real quick. That if everything went right, maybe it could be something to consider. Maybe it could be something that happens. Because you look at other teams that could trade up for a quarterback. Think of who could trade up for him. Let's just go down the draft order. 11 for the Dolphins. They could just wait, right? Because behind Washington, the Saints pick 8. They're not taking a quarterback. Chiefs aren't taking a quarterback. Bengals aren't taking a quarterback. So the Dolphins maybe could take a quarterback at 11. Maybe. And again, that's probably Ty Simpson. You get excited about Ty Simpson at 11? Probably not. Especially when it's kind of a reset year for the Dolphins anyways. I would just take best player available if I were them.
Yeah, Quinn Ewers at quarterback. You really think Ty Simpson's going to do like it's the same picture.
Yeah. Yeah. Dallas is at 12. They're not taking a quarterback. We'll get to 13 in a second. Baltimore's not taking a quarterback at 14. Tampa's not taking a quarterback. Maybe the Jets get interested at 16 and decide since they got their stud at 2, whoever it is, Bailey, Reese, take your pick, that maybe they're like, all right, let's go ahead and swing here. But if I'm the Jets, I think they have 3 first-round picks in next year's draft. That's the draft to get your quarterback. And by the way, they probably understand that they have an incumbent head coach right now in Aaron Glenn. I don't know that he's their long-term answer. So I don't know that they're going to say, hey, let's allow him to go get his quarterback now. Like, I think they're not that worried about it. I think they're going to take best player available at their picks, and then they'll wait till next year when they'll have all the ammo to potentially get the top guy, or they can move around and maneuver and make sure they get one of the top guys. So I don't see them doing that, right? But there's your other potential one, the Jets.
It's going to be big Malik Willis hours.
Lions,
New York.
Yeah, Lions aren't doing that. Vikings aren't trading up for a quarterback. Panthers aren't trading up for a quarterback. Dallas again at 20. The only other
They
team
could trade up for a quarterback.
Go ahead.
They could use it.
Well, especially because I'm not bought in on Ty Simpson. Then fantastic. Draft Ty Simpson. The Steelers to be pick number 21. That'd be the only other team in a reasonable range. Like the Browns aren't moving up from 24, right? Like, and I think moving up from 21 to 7, that's a hefty price. That's a lot of capital to move up for Ty Simpson, who's likely quarterback number 2. You're not moving up for Carson Beck.
No.
So
I'd rather move up for Carson Beck than Ty Simpson, and that should tell you all you need to know.
Correct. So let me lay out the maybe lone scenario for you. Unless someone shocks you and comes up for another position where someone maybe wants, I don't know, like is someone trading up a lot to get. Now, I guess there's actually another scenario. I just thought of it, and I think someone's talking about it in the chat. But let's start with the main one here. Quarterback. Ty Simpson, you need him to kill the draft process. I mean, test off the charts, play as well as possible, throw as well as possible at the combine, have an incredible pro day, and I need you to look like an absolute genius and sound like an absolute genius when you walk into the meeting room with the Los Angeles Rams. Because that's the one team that could be the wild card that potentially could consider it, because they could do it without having to seriously mix up anything that they're doing. Now, here's what they would have to consider, right? The teams that we just mentioned looking for quarterbacks. Jets at 16. Steelers at 21. Browns at 24. Would any of those teams take Ty Simpson at their pick? Or could the Rams, if they fall in love with Ty Simpson, like I'm saying, could they just take him at 29? Or would a team maybe try to trade back up in before them at 29 to take him? Regardless, that's part of the game you have to play here. But the scenario that I'm thinking, which again is very, very unlikely, but potentially the Rams fall in love with this guy, and the Rams want to trade up from 13 to 7, understanding that they have more draft capital this year because this is a extra pick that they got from last year's draft with the Falcons. And so they can move this pick, and because it's only moving up 6 picks, they can secure their quarterback of the future, understanding that Ty Simpson needs to sit behind a veteran for at least a year, maybe even 2 if Stafford wants to play multiple seasons, but they want to have their next quarterback in line ready to go. And this could be the year to do it because you have an extra pick and you don't necessarily feel like you're giving up extra capital to go get your quarterback, and now you've secured your future. But the question is Ty Simpson the future? I don't know that he is. I don't know that he is that guy. But say he balls out in the pre-draft process and Sean McVay falls in love. I mean, if I had to put a percentage chance on that, it's like a 2% chance. There's next to no chance it happens. But I think that's on the table. One other one that I hadn't really considered, but I do think is interesting. Someone in the chat has brought this up. What if the Kansas City Chiefs feel like they need to establish their running game? And they feel like they need to mix things up and build a different identity to help out Patrick Mahomes coming off of an injury and say, let's work on our run game. And they decide they want to go from 9 to 7 because there's a real chance that the Saints are looking at Jeremiah Love as a spark plug for their offense. And the Chiefs said, you know what? Let's move up to go get our guy, just 2 picks, because it won't cost an exorbitant amount, but it'll give Washington an extra pick. Or maybe they move up a couple in some later rounds. That could be maybe your other scenario, but that one doesn't bring you significant assets. So I'm not as interested in that. That one doesn't bother me. If you get it, you do it, right? If the Chiefs call, if Brett Veach gets on the phone and says, hey, we'll give you an extra whatever it is, I'd have to look at the value chart. Not going to be anything significant, but maybe they give you an extra third or something like that, and you swap picks in later. I don't know exactly what the numbers would be, but it's not like you're getting a first and a second probably to move up 2 picks. But regardless, if you get an extra pick, any currency that you can get in this year's NFL draft is big because you just don't have enough. So I would take that. But the only real scenario where you could end up with a decent haul of draft picks is if Ty Simpson has a great pre-draft process that I don't know that anyone's really expecting him to do. Not that you don't expect him to do well in the pre-draft process, but I'm talking hitting home runs, grand slams, looking like Barry Bonds up there, except for without the steroids. Like I need hitting dingers nonstop every time he does anything. In the interview room, at the combine running the 40, throwing at the pro day, doing everything super well. If everything goes well and Sean McVay falls in love and says, you know what, let's make sure we secure our guy because we've got an extra pick. And the reason you could do it and the reason you could sell that for this year would be we've got the extra pick from the James Pierce trade. We still have our later first-round pick, so we can still get an impact guy, and we make sure to secure our quarterback before we have to find a guy. The best time to get a quarterback is when you don't need one. Right? That's the time to acquire one. Green Bay's done that for years, right? And look how they've built this thing up, where they seemingly never go without a quarterback. So having the next guy in waiting would be great if you're the Rams. This could be the year to do that versus what if next year you play well again, you're picking in the late part of the first round, potentially even as late as dead last because you won the Super Bowl, and you need a quarterback because Matt Stafford is retired and went out on top. Got to be tough to find the quarterback, even though there might be 5 or 6 guys next year that you feel good about, maybe even feel better than Ty Simpson. What if you don't even get those guys, right? If you were in 2024 and you were picking 15th and you wanted the quarterback and you wanted one of the top 6, the crazy part is you missed out on all of them. 6 of them went in the top 12. I don't know that that happens again next year, but it could. So maybe you just look at it and say, well, desperation, and we also have an abundance. They work together here, and we just go get our quarterback, even though it might not be the perfect guy. We'll just get him and not worry about it. Let's just be safe and not have to worry about it. That's your one scenario. Again, percentage chance, not very high. Could it happen? Maybe. And that's kind of what I'm crossing my fingers for, because I would love for that scenario to play out, get some extra picks, and build this thing up through the draft. 301-230-0980 if you would like to hop in. Also want to get into a little NBA discussion before we get out of here. CBS had ranked the NBA front offices. Sam Quinn of CBS had ranked them. Had Washington ranked 22nd. What do you make of that? 301-230-0980. Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin Sheehan on the Team 980. Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980. Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin today. He'll be back at 10 a.m. tomorrow. 301-230-0980 if you'd like to hop in. Taking a quick break from the NFL. We'll get back to it to close the show because we found out another international game today. Niners are going to go play in Mexico City. They'll be the home team. So Washington's options are now narrowed down to just 3 cities. So we'll get into that before we get out of here in just a couple of moments. But CBS Sports, Sam Quinn, put out a front office rankings for the NBA. And I don't agree with where the Wizards are ranked, which is funny because generally when you think about the history of where this team has been, I don't think that most people would have an issue where if you said in previous iterations of this front office that the Wizards were ranked 22nd, I don't think many people would have much of an issue. And some people might say they're ranked too high in some iterations of the previous front offices here for the Wizards. But I think people feel differently this time around. I think people have real faith in what they're trying to do over there with Michael Winger and Will Dawkins and the crew that they have over there running things for the Wizards right now. And you look at where they're ranked right now with 22nd, and I think they should be much higher than this. Now, some of the things that Quinn points out, he talks about where they're similar to Utah in a lot of ways, which I can agree with. But the fact that Utah is ranked where they're ranked at 8th and Washington is ranked all the way down at 22, I think is a little bit ridiculous. But if you just look at what they've been able to do in their time here, getting out of the Bradley Beal contract and not having to surrender a lot of stuff to get out of it, moving on from Kyle Kuzma, acquiring Trae Young for pennies, acquiring Anthony Davis for next to nothing, that if Davis never were to suit up for the Wizards, yes, they gave up assets. Yes, they moved on from some stuff, but I don't think it's a stupid move, even if Anthony Davis never suited up. It's taking a shot and seeing what can happen. Did they maybe hit the accelerator a little bit too soon? Maybe. We'll see if that ends up being the case. But I like what this front office has done. I think they've done a fantastic job by building this thing, and you can see where they're going. And the big discussion this past week with the All-Star game going on and Adam Silver speaking has been tanking. And I think you look at the way the Wizards have done it, and I think if you're the NBA, if you're going to try to get rid of tanking or you're going to try to amend some things with tanking, there's a reason the Wizards haven't been fined. They're not the ones that are in the spotlight. They've done it the correct way. And I think this front office deserves to be commended for that and the way that they've gone about this. I understand what they're trying to do, which I don't know that I could say for a long time with this front office and with the Wizards was, okay, I get the vision. I get what they're trying to do. I see where they're going. Even if I don't agree with it, I can at least see where you're trying to go. I didn't always feel that way about what the Wizards were trying to do. I feel that way this time around. I understand how they're trying to build this thing up. They've got young guys. And if there's a way to go about this tanking process, because to me, there are different types. Tanking, some people just love to throw that blanket term on anybody trying to lose or not trying to win. I think there's a little bit of a difference. There's trying to lose and there's not trying to win. Trying to lose is what the Utah Jazz were doing, where they've gotten fined a lot, where you have a guy that's played all game long and then suddenly in the fourth quarter when you're up, you pull the guy. That is trying to lose versus not trying to win and not having great players on your basketball team and doing stuff that the Wizards have done. I don't have an issue with that. Having all young guys and saying, okay, all the young guys are going to play 25, 30 minutes a night, I can get on board with that. I can live with that. That to me is the new hip term for kids on social media. That's an ethical tank. Like that's stuff that's allowed. That's stuff that you can do. And so you have to applaud them for what they're trying to do. And you see the vision. And for the most part, with what they've been given, the draft picks that they have had, it seems like they've hit home runs with a majority of them. Bilal Coulibaly, I don't know if he's everything that a lot of Wizards fans expected him to be, but he is a really good defender. And you can see the vision there for him as a wing who can guard the other team's best player. And in a lot of ways neutralize the other team's best player. So even if he's just a defensive stopper that occasionally chips in on the offensive end, you got a contributor there, a guy that can be a part of your rotation and help. You've got Alex Sarr, who looks like the best player in that draft class. Him and Stephon Castle are kind of jockeying back and forth for that position. Take your pick of which one you like more. But Alex Sarr is a unique basketball player and fits perfectly with the modern game, being able to do a little bit of everything on the offensive end for someone his size, and a great rim protector that is going to help build this defense up, and something that Washington's been terrible at for years. Keyshawn George is a really good basketball player. I still don't know exactly what his ceiling is. I don't know that he's a star. I don't know that he's, a top 3 option on a winning ball club, but he is definitely a contributor for a big winning ball club. He's someone that can help out in every aspect of the game. He can shoot it. He can handle the ball for someone his size, which is good. He's a good wing defender as well. I love the idea of being able to put together a unit to close out ball games that you want to lock down defensively, or you want to put out a defensive unit, and you've got Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly, and Alex Sarr on the floor together, and that's not even including guys like Anthony Davis out there. I love that. Bub Carrington has had some ups and downs, but when he's been good, he shows you real flashes, and I think he's someone that in the future can be a nice combo guard to come off the bench that can give you some scoring, give you a little bit of everything, and we'll see if he can continue to develop. Trey Johnson looks awesome this year. He looks like someone that fits the modern NBA perfectly as a shooter. He gives you that sharpshooter that you so much want in this modern NBA, and we'll see if he can continue to develop as an on-ball player, get better as a defender. But as a shooter, he is a sharp-shooting guy who immediately fits in the modern NBA and doesn't have to work on the ball to make things work. And so then you bring in a point guard like Trae Young, who's going to help him out. So I like that move. And then Will Riley. He's come on as the season's gone on and looks really, really impressive and has shown a real ability. And he's someone that not like Wizards fans were thinking a lot of him when the Wizards went and got him. So if you look at what this Wizard front office has done, I don't know how you could rank them as 22nd. I can understand that they're not maybe where you want them to be right now, but I think the Wizards have run into a spot now where, unfortunately, with where they've been, and then with what's happened this year for the Wizards with the trades they've made, you have a lot of people that haven't paid attention to the Wizards in years. And frankly, I don't blame them. They were as irrelevant as it comes for national basketball fans, people that cared about the NBA as a whole. Why would you care about what's going on with the Wizards for the last decade or so? They wouldn't. So a lot of people have been checked out on what's going on with the Wizards. And then they make a couple of big-time trades with guys that people know that are big-time names, even if they're not still the same guys they once were in their prime. People know Trae Young. People know Anthony Davis. And so they make both of those moves, and people are like, whoa, what's going on with the Wizards? What's going on out there? Are they going to compete again? And now they're starting to catch up, and I think they're missing the vision a little bit. I think they're not quite seeing what's going on. I think they're missing it because they haven't been checked in. Again, I don't blame them, but I think locally, I don't think blindly either. A lot of people are fans of what's going on around here, seeing the vision of this team, understanding where they're trying to go. I think most people see that now versus nationally, people that haven't been paying attention are like, oh, they've got young guys and they just traded for 2 old guys. What are they doing? So I think that's where this comes from, frankly. But I think the good part is, and the best feeling of all of this is maybe for the first time in my life, I see the Wizards front office getting a little bit of disrespect, and I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. Generally, you'd see this sort of stuff and you'd pile on, be like, whoa, you're not being harsh enough. Or, yeah, 100%, you're spot on. I see them ranked 22nd here, and I'm almost offended for Will Dawkins. Like, what are you talking about, 22nd? So I think that is nice to see. And the best part about this for Washington is it really does. This obviously is inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. But you look at some of the teams at the top here, the Spurs, teams like that he has at the top here. You want to know why they're at the top? They won the lottery one time, and they got a transcendent player. You want to know how this team can go from 22nd ranked all the way up into the top 5? Give me AJ DeBonsa, and we're in the top 5 next year. Give me Darren Peterson. Well, maybe not. We'll have to talk about that another time with the Darren Peterson stuff going on. That stuff is wild.
We still got a couple seconds left, buddy.
That stuff is wild. But Give me one of those guys. Cameron Boozer. Give me one of those studs. And all of a sudden, this is a top 5 one because they start winning basketball games and this whole thing starts coming together and people see the vision and realize, oh, okay, the Wizards did have a plan. The Wizards were going somewhere. So to me, 22nd, I think that's a little bit ridiculous. But I think it's because people haven't been paying attention to Wizards basketball. And again, I don't blame them. I can tell you one thing. Come next year, it's going to be a must-watch TV. I think this team's been fun the last couple of years, even though they've been losing basketball games. I think next year, you add in a star, assuming the NBA doesn't want to screw the Wizards again in the draft lottery. Give them a top pick and see what happens. By the way, getting rid of the draft would be the dumbest thing ever for the NBA. I don't think tanking is that much worse this year than it has been in previous seasons. Yeah, there are egregious examples, but there are every year. And I don't... The top guys in this draft are fantastic. So I can understand being a little bit extra prudent to try to make sure you get a top pick this year. But I don't think it's exponentially worse than you've seen in previous years where now we're talking about every possible scenario to get rid of these things. Please don't get rid of the draft. That'd be so dumb. I want to talk about NFL. Wrap things up. We got another team announced that'll be hosting an international game. The Niners are going to be the home team for the game in Mexico City. We got to talk about how crazy their travel schedule is for this year, by the way. But Washington now has a couple of locations that they could be the home team for. They're down to basically 3 locations of where they could host a home game in the international schedule next year. We'll give you those locations next. You're listening to the Kevin Sheehan Show. Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin today on the Team 980.
All right, happy Wednesday, everybody. We start off with Team USA. Michaela Schifrin earns the gold in Alpine Slalom Skiing, bringing Team USA's gold medal total up to 7. And Kyrie Irving shutting it down for the remainder of the NBA season this year. He now sets his sight on a return in 26 and 27. Plus, the Chiefs, they have reworked Patrick Mahomes' deal to give themselves an extra $43.5 million in cap space. Mahomes will now carry a cap hit of $85 million in 2027. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch programs like Take Command all off season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us. Turn on notifications, stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Final couple of minutes of the Kevin Sheehan Show. Toby Altizer sitting in for Kevin today. Rooster coming up at 1 o'clock right here on the Team 980. Finishing up with a little more football discussion. We found out another international game home team. The 49ers are going to be the home team for the game in Mexico City, which will be in week 13 or 14, I believe, which makes for an absolutely crazy travel schedule for the Niners this year. So they start the year in Melbourne, Australia, which real quick, a little snooty sounding here, Max. My mom lived in Australia for a while, so I've been over there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the Australian way of saying Melbourne instead of saying Melbourne like most Americans.
Yeah.
So if I sound weird when I say it, I'm saying it like the Australian way because I can't fix it in my head. It's Melbourne.
You're just stuck that way.
Yeah, like I can't do the Melbourne or whatever people say over here.
I think you did all right.
It's Melbourne, Australia. Regardless, Melbourne is going to host the Rams and the Niners. And then the Niners also have to play a game now in Mexico City, on top of being one of the teams on the left coast that has to make long trips across to the East Coast. They play the Giants this year. They play the Falcons. And if everything goes without any sort of adjustments, they'll play a season in which they'll travel over 38,000 miles. 38,000 miles. No team has ever gone over 38. The Chargers last season and the 2016 Rams have both gone over 37,000. The Rams next year will be around 35,000 going to play in Australia with the Niners. But the Niners could be at 38,000 miles. 38. That is ridiculous. I'm fired up that they're playing a game in Australia. I have no idea logistically how you can make that work. Like I said, I've been over there, so I understand a little bit of what it's like. I haven't played at an NFL level, so I'm not trying to travel back and try to get... I mean, for me, it was usually coming back and getting right back into the college swing of things, and it'd take me like a week to figure out the sleep schedule again.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine coming back from a game after you play on Thursday or Friday or maybe Wednesday, and then you've got maybe a day or two to try to figure out your sleep schedule, and now we're getting ready for week 2.
Yeah, I know who I'm betting on in week 2, baby.
Like, that is absolutely wild. And then you throw in the fact that now the Niners are going to go to Mexico City. That is insane. I was listening to the Junks a little bit earlier today. They had Pro Football Talks Mike Florio on, and he was basically saying there's not a lot that they can do about it. They can kind of complain and moan and see if the NFL cares, which I can guarantee you one thing, it won't.
Well, that's the other thing. The Niners have been complaining about something very recent, and now I completely understand why they're trying to get far as hell away from home.
Yeah, maybe they're going to play Mexico City and feel better because there's not an electrical substation. Probably be fine at the Melbourne Cricket Grounds because there's no electrical substation right next to it.
Yeah, they don't have electricity down there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's that far. But yeah, who knows? Maybe they'll enjoy their time away. But the Commanders' angle on this is for Washington now, knowing that they're going to be the home team or the host for an international game this season, that takes another potential place away that they could have hosted a game, which would have been Mexico City. So now they're down to 3 locations, 5 total games that they could host. So London's going to host 3 games, or at least 3 games. I'm not sure if there's going to be any more there, but at least 3 games in London. So Washington could be the home team in London. They could be the home team in Munich, and they could be the home team in Madrid this time around. If you had to pick one of those 3, Max, which one you going to?
What was the first? Mexico City, Munich, Madrid?
No, London, Munich, Madrid.
Oh, man. I need to get to Europe. Madrid's probably the one.
But they just were in Madrid.
Munich would be sick. I took German in high school. German culture's always kind of fascinated me. For the right reasons. Don't worry about that. But I do think Munich would be really sick.
Munich would be fun. I've been to London before. I'd love to go back. The thing about London is they're so set up for football games. They're ready to go. Like,
well, the football matches over there.
Well, you can play a game at Tottenham Stadium, and it doesn't affect Tottenham's schedule at all.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they have everything ready to go.
There's no overlap, yeah.
Yeah, like they have all sorts of stuff ready to go. Like one of the things that disappointed me about the Madrid trip, there wasn't many, but the only thing that really did was I wanted to go watch a Real Madrid game while I was over there.
Fair.
And that wasn't going to happen. So they were on like an international break. If you wanted to go to a Real Madrid game, you had to be there for a full week before, the Sunday before, or the Sunday after they played games. So you missed out on seeing a La Liga game over there. If they play in London, I think there's still a chance that you could go see a Premier League game, because even if they're playing at Wembley, you can go watch a game at Chelsea, or you can maybe travel around. Like, there's so many clubs in and around London that you can go to. I'm sure there's stuff that Munich, I'm not sure if their capabilities in Munich are as cool, which, by the way, I don't know how up to date you are with your European soccer stadiums. Allianz Arena for Bayern Munich is sick.
I've heard.
It is sick. So I think that would be a really cool destination. I'm not as keen on Munich. I think it'd be fun, but I'm not as keen on it. I also wasn't that keen on Madrid. And then I went to Madrid and I thought it was the greatest thing ever. So it's interesting that you've got these three cities left: London, Munich, and Madrid. I'm curious how many people will go this time around, because when you have this last year with Madrid, it's the first time that they'd played overseas in a long, long time. And there was a renewed vigor in the fan base. People really cared about this team once again. So I'm curious to see, now that they'll be going overseas back-to-back years and potentially pretty regularly going forward, because even if they take a year off, they're going to be back overseas the following year. How many people will continue to go to these things? And will it start growing a little more locally depending upon where they're going? If it's London, maybe that's the interesting one for me. If it's London, are people less likely to go in London or more likely to go in London? Are you less likely to go because it's the stock city that so many people go to?
Yeah.
Or are you more likely to go to London because it's London?
Well, that's the thing. There's so many other things I want to do in London and on the island of the UK in general, that I don't want to have my first time be centered around football. You know what I mean?
So have you been to Europe at all?
No, I need to. I'm 25 and it's on the list.
It is fantastic. It's a lot of fun. I went when I was a lot younger, so I'd love to go back. Speaking of London, but Europe's a lot of fun. And the funny part about this is, for the longest time, I couldn't stand the international games. I thought they were stupid. I thought it was
like the
dumb.
time slot.
Yeah, I think it's cool to add an extra, but I was like, who cares? Send it overseas. And now that I've experienced one, I'm all on board.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do it. Now, my one stipulation: no Super Bowl should be played overseas.
Now that I don't think that's a bridge the NFL will ever cross. Actually, no,
I think they will.
You're right. They will cross it.
Which, to be honest with you, I don't know how much of a difference, but I don't know how much of a difference it makes, to be honest with you. Even though I don't like it, how many actual fans can afford to go to the Super Bowl?
It's our sport, man.
Well, yes, it is. That's the main reason I don't want it to go anywhere else. But if part of the reason is you want local fans to be able to go to games, how many of the local fans can even afford to go to the Super Bowl now? You look at the prices in San Francisco, couple grand just for tickets, and then I saw it wasn't the NFL's official parking, but there was parking nearby that was like $400. And then I saw the NFL PR guy retweet and was like, well, this wasn't official NFL parking. Official NFL parking was only $150. Excuse me? 150 is only, it's absurd how expensive it is. So maybe it doesn't really matter, but I'm excited to see where Washington ends up going. Let's get these dates as soon as possible. I want to start booking some travel. I think that might be my annual vacation. Wherever Washington goes to play some football internationally, let's go travel around and watch it. Speaking of traveling around internationally, we had the Rooster internationally last year. Got to watch him go out and about.
He flew the coop.
He was crowing out in Madrid last year. Be curious to hear where the Rooster would like to go. Chris Russell, the Rooster, comes up next here on the Team 980. Kevin will be back tomorrow. Appreciate everybody listening in. For Max behind the scenes, Toby Altizer. Rooster comes up next here on the Team 980.